right, for the seventh time, I guess I'm making this introduction. Medieval cooking in a modern kitchen with the creative Contessa. Okay, well, we'll see. With the creative Contessa, we're going to be doing two recipes today. One of them I have made lots of times for various feasts. That's the last thing we're going to do. The first thing we're going to do, this is the first time I'm experimenting with this recipe. So we're going to be experimenting together. That means that we'll be reading through the original 15th century English transcription of the original 15th century English anyway, and we'll be talking about some of the vocabulary. I'll give you an ingredients tour and I'll explain where some of these ingredients come from, where all of the ingredients come from actually, and how they work in concert with each other. And then together we're going to go through the recipe step by step and determine what we think is the best way of going about it. So this is actually a medieval cooking recreation episode. So I'm not just straight up doing medieval cooking, because that would just be easy if I took a recipe I've already redacted. I'm going to show you the process of redacting a recipe. So the recipe that we will be actively redacting is called larded milk. And yeah, that probably conjures all the wrong flavors and all the wrong textures. I totally understand. But lard in 15th century English does not mean only rendered pork fat. Lard is actually also the word, just like lardon, lardones in different dialects of Romance languages, is actually the pork belly fat area, right? So it's some of the meat and the fat of the pork belly. And so it's actually one of my favorite parts of the pig, honestly. And so that's what makes this larded. But what's interesting about these larded milk recipes, and I've read through about 20 original larded milk recipes, many of them don't have the larded part because, you know, on Lenten days, you weren't supposed to eat meat. So there are lots of recipes that are automatically implied to be for Lenten days. But the larded part is not adding lard. You're actually adding basically pieces of pork belly to it. So the lard, I was not able to find pork belly from what I call happy pigs. So we're doing the Lenten version today because I don't like eating pork belly unless I know it comes from unless it comes from a happy pig that ate what it's supposed to eat, and therefore its fatty acid profile is actually healthy. So we're doing the Lenten version today, right? Okay, so let's go ahead and read through the first recipe together. I will read it to you, rather, and I will do my best 15th century English pronunciation, such as it is. And then we're going to talk about, we're going to read through at least one of the recipes, and then I'll talk about two of the other ones that we're using as a point of comparison. But for larded milk, almost every cookbook, it seems, in the 15th century English and French sources have at least one recipe for larded milk. So this was super, super popular. And as you're going to see, once we get through it, it really is basically like paneer. It's like paneer, it's like halloumi, you make a cheese that you then fry. And in some cases in lard, in Greece, actually. So let's go ahead and look at our first recipe. The main one that I'll be pulling from, and then we'll talk about how we're going to look at other ones and use information from some of the other recipes to inform our decisions about this one. Now, if I were to do this as a thorough academic endeavor, I would actually do what's called a concordance. And a concordance is where you take all the recipes, you break them down in a grid fashion by each part, and you see which of the recipes have the same instructions and which ones are missing certain instructions. So you can get an idea of pieces that you might be missing in one recipe that might be covered in another of the recipes. We do this for dance. It's called a concordance, however. I don't have the 20 hours it would take me to do a concordance for all the recipes of larded milk because there are that many. So let's go ahead and look at the recipe we're going to be, the main recipe, and then we'll get to two of the others. So this one is actually from a book that was published called 15th Century Cookbooks, or Cookery Books. And the recipe itself comes from the 1430s in England. But that book, the 15th century cookery books, is actually widely available. Well, widely available. It's available. You can find it. You can find it sometimes on Abe Books, for instance, and for not too much money. So here we go through the recipe. Let lardis. Taka milke scalding hotte, and taka Aaron, the yolks and the wheat, and draw him through a strainer, and casta to the milka. And then draw the use of herbs which thou will, so that they been good, and draw him through a strainer. And when the milk beginneth to crude, cast the use thereto. If thou will have it green, and if thou will have it red, take saunders and cast to the milk when it crowdeth, and leva the herbs. And if thou wilt have it yellow, take saffron and cast to the milk when it crudeth, and leave the saunders. And if thou wilt have it all these colors, take a pot with milk and use of herbs, and another pot with milk and saffron, and another pot with milk and saunders, and put him all in a linen cloth, and press him all together. And if thou wilt have of one color, take but one cloth, and strain it in a cloth in the same manner, and bait on the cloth with a ladle or a skimmer, to make sad or flat, and let it fare with a knife, and fry the leches in a pan with a little fresh grease, and take a little and put it in a dish and serve it forth. Okay, you're not late, Takeda, because we had sound issues, so you're joining just in time. Thank you for joining us this morning. Okay, so that is what the most detailed recipe, I will say. And it's specific. What's interesting about it is how it talks about all these different colors. Actually, that wasn't the one I really wanted to read. I wanted the one, this one, right? Okay, so that's recipe number 1. Recipe number 2. Take a parcel and grind it with a cow milk, meddle it with iron and lard educed. Take a milk after thou hast to do, and ming therewith, and make thereof diverse colors. If thou wilt have yellow, do thereto saffron and no parcel. If thou wilt have it white, none other parcel ni saffron, but do thereto amidun. If thou wilt have red, do thereto saunders. If thou wilt have polness, do thereto tornazola. If thou wilt have a black, do thereto blood soda and freed, and set on the fire in as many vessels as thou hast colours thereto, and seethe it well, and lie these colours in a cloth first one, and sithen another upon him, and sithen the third and the fourth, and press it hard till it be all out clean. And when it is all cold, lesh it thinner, and put it in a pan, and fry it well, and serve it forth. Okay, so, oh, Dilnoza, it's so lovely to have you back. Thank you. I've been practicing my 15th century English pronunciation. It's actually relatively easy because it's phonetic, but it's not easy because I'm used to not phonetic English, modern English. Anyway, okay, so there is one more recipe from Le Ménagier de Paris, the Goodman of Paris, and this recipe would be in the Medieval Home Companion if it had all the recipes that the Ménagier de Paris contains. This one is interesting because it has a couple of other interesting details that have flashed out this recipe. So, lardy milk. Again, we need to rename this. It needs better branding for certain. Lardy milk. Take milk of cows or ewes and put to boil on the fire, and throw in bits of bacon and some saffron, and have eggs, that is white and yolk, well beaten, and throw in all at once without stirring. Aha, interesting detail, right? And make it all boil together. And then take it off the fire and leave it to curdle. Or without eggs, for example, Lenten days, without eggs, use verjuice to turn it. And when it is cool, tie it up stoutly in a piece of cloth or net, and give it whatever shape you wish, flat or long, and weight it with a large rock. Let it cool on a sideboard all night. And the next day, release it, fry it alone without added grease, or with grease if you wish, and it is placed on plates or in bowls like slices of bacon, and stuck with cloves and pine nuts. And if you want to make it green, use turnsel. Okay, so let me just check on, okay, great. So we've got some really interesting details here. The base is, though, the base idea is that we are going to be heating up the milk to boiling. We're going to be adding eggs to it, and that's supposed to cause curdling. And that should not just curdle the eggs, it should curdle the milk. It is supposed to pull the protein and the fat out of the way. That is what should happen. We should end up here with basically a brick of cheese, fresh cheese, but hard enough that after at the end of it, we can slice it and fry it. So that's what's supposed to happen. Now, among these other recipes, there's lots of variations. There is variations on adding spices sometimes, adding salt, and the spices that are added are very interesting, and we'll look at those together. And so there's lots of options. One of the recipes for larded milk actually definitely makes a custard and isn't actually curds at all. So there's lots of variations. The thing seems to be that, at least in its origin, pork belly should be added to it. And remember that bacon doesn't necessarily, probably actually doesn't mean what you think of as bacon. It's not like smoked American style streaky bacon. It's the pork belly, right? It's the part of the pig that they're talking about. So in its origin, that seems to be the unifying thing, milk and bacon, but there's lots of Lenten options in here. Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. I make paneer all the time, and this really sounds like a fancy paneer recipe, right? Especially with all the colorings. Now, there's another recipe that actually talks about the first recipe read actually talked about stacking the layers of colors together and pressing them so that you end up with slices of cheese that will be rainbow in color. Another recipe that I didn't include talks about taking all the different colored curds after they've formed curds in their different colors, draining them and mixing the curds together and then pressing it so that you end up with what modernly we would call funfetti cheese, funfetti larded milk, right? So this kind of underscores just how sophisticated medieval cuisine really is. It is not the crude, the crude caveman cuisine that certain early 20th century English historians claimed it was. Okay, so let's go ahead and so saffron. So let's go ahead and talk about what we're going to be doing today. And we're going to do an ingredients tour. So I actually teach cooking professionally. I teach cooking experiences. And very important to me in cooking is understanding the science when that applies, understanding your ingredients and where they come from and how to prepare them and store them, and also how all of this interacts together and if there's any culture or history. Obviously, this is history. This is literally a 15th century recipe that very popular, 15th century dish, very popular in England and France. I haven't really plowed through all of my Italian sources to see what might be found there, but we'll see. Okay, so let's go ahead and do our ingredient tour. Okay, so some things. So this is salt. This is actually a replica salt cellar. This is pink Himalayan salt. No criticism, please. For all I know, they may have been importing salt from the Himalayas. I doubt it, but that's what I have on hand, right? But this is actually a replica 15th century salt cellar by Todd Cutler. Not a channel sponsor. He just makes amazing stuff, right? I love this salt cellar. Then, of course, saffron. Okay, saffron, you have to be really careful about saffron. There is so much garbage out there being marketed as saffron when it's really just petals from dandelions or something like that. So you'll notice a couple of very key characteristics. Saffron is not yellow in color. It is red, and it's very fine, thin threads, and it will have, oh my God, just such a very wonderful, distinctive smell. This is saffron that's actually grown in Western Washington by a saffron farm there. So yeah, I bought this at Pike Place Market in Seattle. So nice. Okay. These are pignons, as they're called in French, pine nuts, and we'll be using these at the end to decorate. Excuse me. These are our eggs. We're not going to use all of these eggs for the larded milk, but we'll be using these eggs for the second recipe, Zabaglione. This is butter, and we might end up using this for frying our lards, but actually this will also be for our second recipe for certain. And then I got lazy. I did not go and get parsley today, but I've got other green herbis in my fridge. And one of the recipes for larded milk basically says, take whatever green herbs thou wilt, right? And so this is what I've got. I've got rocket, which is absolutely available in medieval Europe. It's a weed, right? Arugula, as it's called in Italian. And then this is actually crown daisy. This is a local Korean herb. And I got it out because I have it in my plant, vegetable, whatever. I have it leafy green. It was in my fridge and I pulled it out to think what I would feel about grinding that for the green juice. But I actually think that the rocket is going to be more successful for juicing because it's not, yeah, I just think this is going to be more successful, but we might play with both. Now we have our spices, right? So let's talk about cinnamon for a moment, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, so cinnamon comes in two forms, and there's a true cinnamon, Cinnamomum verum, and then there's cassia. This is Cinnamomum verum, and you can tell it is because it looks like millefeuille. It's got 1,000 little layers. Well, 1,000 is a very strong word. That's millefeuille means that, but it's got a lot of layers. This is the bark of the cinnamon tree, and they peel it off and then they stack the layers of bark into each other to make these long sticks of cinnamon. Cassia, the cheap version, is just one solid scroll. Cassia does not have it lacks many of the health-giving properties of true cinnamon, also called Ceylon cinnamon, the medieval English word for Sri Lanka, right? They knew where this came from. They knew it came from Sri Lanka, so it was called Ceylon cinnamon in many cases. And this is the version of cinnamon that has the good effect on your blood sugar, right? Cassia actually has a compound that if you eat too much of it will prove toxic and will do liver damage. So cassia, avoid cassia. Cassia is honestly the one that tastes like red hot candies in the US, if you know what those are. That fake cinnamon flavor is actually cassia cinnamon. Cinnamomum verum has a more subtle, less aggressive flavor. The bark, you can actually eat it. I actually do frequently just take a little piece of bark and chew on it because it's yummy and it's sweet. I learned you could do that when I went to Sri Lanka to a plantation that had cinnamon trees, and they literally shaved a piece of cinnamon off and gave it to me to eat. Never, oh my God, fresh cinnamon right off the tree. Wow, just wow. Anyway, so this is cinnamon. We will be grinding it. I have a granite mortar and pestle that we'll be using. I don't have evidence of granite mortars and pestles in Europe. I have evidence of ones made of various kinds of metal and wooden ones. So I don't know if this exists. I don't have evidence of this. If you have evidence of medieval Europe using stone mortars and pestles, do let me know. But I don't have a wooden one and I don't have a metal one. This is what I have. So we're using it. It's better than using a blender, right? Because remember that using a mortar and pestle is going to give you a completely different outcome on grinding anything than a modern food processor will. It's going to pull out different flavor compounds. It's not going to overheat it the way that your food processor will overheat it and possibly cause certain fatty acids to go rancid, right? So using a food processor is not a one-to-one substitution for the mortar and pestle. The mortar and pestle is the medieval food processor, by the way. Okay, other spices that are sometimes called for. We had cloves were mentioned, right? So these are cloves. And many of you know cloves, right? Cloves are pretty common in the West, whether in, usually part of pumpkin pie spice, cloves. Cloves, most people don't realize that cloves are actually the flowers of the clove tree. And to actually process them into this, to strip away the unwanted parts to this is very laborious, very laborious. But cloves, of course, actually have analgesic properties. If you chew on it, it will eventually make your mouth go numb if you chew on enough of them, right? It's a very powerful spice. There's lots of antioxidants, lots of health-giving properties in cloves. So in medieval cuisine, it wasn't just a question of flavor. There was actually real health benefits to eating food with cloves in it. Yeah. Oh goodness, I've missed a whole bunch of comments. I'll get to it in a moment after the spice tour. Okay, so then mace. Mace, this is mace. Mace is the cover of nutmeg. So many of you know nutmeg, especially many people in the United States know nutmeg, but they don't necessarily know mace. Mace is the cover of the nutmeg. and it has a similar flavor profile, but it's spicier, I find, mace. Mace is also called for in a bunch of recipes. Oh, I forgot the peppercorns. I'll have to grab the peppercorns when it's time. Okay, but all of these spices come from the spice islands, right? They come from Indonesia, they come from Sri Lanka. They are highly expensive, highly luxurious items in medieval Europe. Not everyone had access to these. So any recipe that calls for these kinds of spices automatically rates itself as being for the upper level of society or for super special occasions. Yeah. So I'm so medieval coded. Well, yeah, I mean, this is medieval cooking. Yeah, hot whiskey and cloves for a toothache. Absolutely, 100%. If you happen to get a toothache and you've got nothing else, if you just chew on the cloves, it will really help a lot. Yep, exactly. Let me see. Okay, fantastic. Right. So I believe that's all of our ingredients towards. Oh, right. So this is actually this is for the second recipe. This is a replica 15th century wine flask, right? So this is actually based on extant ones, and this style kind of started out actually in ancient Rome in the 3rd century AD. We have a glass one of these that survived, and so I decanted, trying to keep as medieval as possible with what few historical vessels I have. I've tried to keep it as pretty as possible for you all. This is the sweet wine we'll be using for the second recipe. And then over here, I have a historical Chinese vessel. This is our milk. This is our milk. Now, this is whole milk. And for this recipe, you definitely want to be using whole milk. Ideally, if you can find it. Oh, thank you, Z. I appreciate that. Ideally, if you can find it, get raw milk. I know there's all kinds of people are going to get up in arms probably when I suggest raw milk, but these medieval recipes were not designed for pasteurized and homogenized milk. So there is a chance that this isn't going to work exactly the way it does in this recipe because, of course, my milk has been pasteurized. Pasteurization isn't such a problem so much. The homogenization might be problematic because homogenization literally makes it so that the milk will not separate. But we want the milk to separate into its component parts with the fat and the protein in one corner and the whey in the other. If it doesn't work instantly the way it should with just the eggs, we can add an acid as one of the recipes actually calls for, and that should absolutely force it to curdle. So we shall see. We shall see. Now, in terms of cooking vessels, I don't have any of my medieval European cooking pots here, but I do have some traditional Korean clay pots. So we'll be using these as the next best thing that I have here in my modern kitchen. And I use these all the time for modern cooking, by the way. So this is made by a local potter, a master potter, right? It's handmade. And you can cook with this over the stovetop. You can cook with it like right over the flames. You can cook with it in the oven. It's fantastic. It's tempered for that. So I have this one, which obviously has definitely a more historic look to it. And then this clay pot is certainly definitely 100% modern. But still, I think we'll get closer to the effects of medieval clay pots than we will in my super refined modern stainless steel pans. So that's what I managed to dig up for you with the limited access to my medieval equipment that I have there. Yeah, exactly. So Dilnoza, one of the things that historically they added verjuice, and it says it. The Ménagier de Paris talked about adding verjuice to curdle it. Verjuice is the juice of unripe grapes, of grapes when they're green, and it was a staple in the medieval kitchen, and it's still a staple in Persia. I'm pretty certain Persian cuisine I know still uses verjuice. I know they do, for certain. In Iran, because that's where you go. Pro tip, if you want to buy verjuice from a store, if you've got a grocery store that sells Persian ingredients groceries, they usually sell verjuice. Or if there's a market, you have some kind of international market, and there's a Persian cuisine stall, they often have verjuice. So it's harder to get. I don't know any sources for it in the West. I know some people have experimented with making it. Yeah. Okay, so let's see. I think that's it. I think we're ready to go ahead and dive into the recipe itself. So This recipe is all about curdling the milk, and the word curdle has like 5 spellings in 3 sentences, I think, in the original Middle English. So there are different ways that the curdling is achieved in various versions of this larded milk. Lait larded. Lait comes from the French lait, French for milk, right? Which is how we know that many of these recipes that appear in English sources have French origins, because the names are either Anglicizations of the French, or it's just the French word, straight up. So yeah, so we're going to be, the curdling seems to be achieved in one of 2 ways. Either it's achieved by boiling the milk and adding whole eggs that have been mixed through a strainer, or well mixed in some cases first, or it's brought to a boil, and in 2 cases I saw that acids were added. One, the acid was ale, interestingly, and in this other one it was verjuice. Now, I don't have verjuice. If I need to, I do have vinegar. I think probably the closest thing to verjuice is probably going to be my red wine vinegar, but I'm hoping we won't need it. I'm really hoping we won't need it. For once, I don't have any kind of, I've got some Thai whiskey back there we could add, but I don't think that's going to do the right thing either. Okay, questions. Yeah, Dilnoza, absolutely. So verjuice is when you have a great field. Dilnoza, we so need to come visit you. I really want to come visit you so badly. You sound like this amazing place. I want to explore. It just sounds wonderful. Yeah, you could make your own verjuice then. Yep. Okay, so let's go ahead and dive into it. So there's 2 options that I crop up. Either we boil the milk first and then we add everything, or we actually mix everything together and then bring the milk to a boil. So for instance, in this recipe from A Form of Curry, which is a cookbook from the court of Richard II, by the way, I think one of culturally the most underrated king of England. We can talk about his policies, that's a different question, but in terms of his cultural contributions, definitely one of the most underrated kings of England, I feel like. In The Form of Curry, it says to take the parsley and grind it with cow's milk. Now, I love that idea, because that is how I extract color from any natural food stuff that I'm using. So for instance, when I want to get color out of saffron, I will grind it with whatever liquid it's going to be added to, a little bit of it. So if it's milk, I'll grind it with milk. If it is rose water, I'll grind it with rose water, because then it makes certain that none of the precious particles or dye stuffs are left in the mortar. The liquid draws them all out. So yeah, I really like the idea of taking the parsley, or in this case, the arugula, and grinding it with a kua milk, with some cow's milk. Now, in this recipe, it's very clear that it says take parsley and grind it with cow's milk, mix it with eggs and lardy diced, and then take milk after that thou hast to done and ming therewith. So what this means is that there is just a small amount of milk, just enough to grind the parsley and pull out the herbis, pull the green out from the herbis, and then you add more milk later. So that really sounds exactly like the method that I use with getting the color, say, out of saffron. I use just enough to pull out the color and loosen it from the mortar, but then you add the rest of the liquid into the main container. So that's one option. The other option is to take the milk, and it's funny because the French version specifies cow's milk or sheep's milk. So I think this would make an amazing sheep's milk dish. And that doesn't surprise me, because France has so many more milk cheeses than England does, for instance. So it seems that they use the milk much more often than England is using it, at least based on the recipes and, of course, the presence of sheep's milk cheese. I prefer sheep's milk cheese to cow's milk cheese every single time. Still love cow's milk cheese, don't mistake me, but just saying. Sheep's milk for the win. Goat milk also, yummy. Then the third recipe that we have says take milk scalding hot, which means the milk starts hot, and then take eggs, yolks, and the white and draw them through a strainer and then add them to the hot milk. And then extract the juice of herbs and then add that. So, you know, there's all kinds of different ways we could do this. I could even still take that instruction from the first recipe about mixing, about doing the mortar, using the milk to help extract the juice from my herbes, and then add it in the stage. So this is the moment of truth, the moment of truth. Do we want to mix everything up and then bring it to a boil, right? So mix everything in together and then bring it to a boil, or do we want to try the boil the milk first and then add the ingredients in? Let me know which one you think you would prefer. Oh goodness, I see what I did. That's on me. That is definitely on me. Yep. Okay, so which do we want? Boil the milk first or mix all the ingredients and then add them to the pot and then bring it up to a boil? I kind of like the idea, honestly. Personally, I like the idea of mixing all the ingredients together, because then it will be more thoroughly mixed and the green will be for out. Boil the milk first. Okay, let's do it. Let's do it. We'll boil the milk first. So while the milk is heating up, that means I'll be working on extracting the juice from the herbis while it's boiling. So it's a two-step thing. So that's no problem. But what I wanted to look at is, so we're going to go ahead and do that. We're going to go ahead and bring the milk to a boil. And then we will take the eggs and bring them in. So it says here, take milk scalding hot and take eggs and draw them through a strainer and cast it to the milk. Okay, here we go. My cute little milk decanter. Okay, so I'm actually doing 2 colors. So we'll do 2 pots. I'll try to divide this roughly half and half. These little, what on earth is that? I think I might have to strain my milk. There was something very strange in this little pot that shouldn't have been, because I washed it. But okay, I'm going to dump the milk out and then I'm going to strain it, because there's things in there I definitely don't think I want in my final product. So I'm just going to take my strainer, and this is my modern strainer because the medieval one that I have is huge and way too big for this application. So yeah, I'm definitely going to go ahead and strain this, because there's some weird things. Yeah, so here, let me show you what I mean. See all those floaters? They shouldn't be in there. I'm just going to strain this into a bowl. And sorry that I don't have any more. I don't have any of my ceramic bowls here. I'm very sad. So we have to go with the regular old modern bowl. But there it is. It's fine. I'm just gonna strain this. Yeah, there we go. That looks, yeah, definitely we don't want any of that in our milk. Fix that in a moment. Okay, so milk in. No, I'm all for it. Let's do the milk in and see what happens. Let's see what happens. I'm just going to vaguely divide this evenly. Now, you'll notice something about this recipe. Maybe you notice something. What is missing in both of these recipes? What is not here? What is not here? So I'll give you a hint. How much milk? How many eggs? Right? There's no indication there. It literally just says take milk, taka milka scalding hotte and taka ären, the yolks and the wheat. So I'm kind of going on my modern understanding of, say, quiche. In terms of ratio of amount of milk to amount of eggs. And usually for quiche, it's usually like 2 cups of milk for 2 eggs, so like 1 egg per cup of milk. So I'm kind of vaguely going on that. And you're probably asking me, well, how did you measure your milk? By eye. I measured it by eye. You know, the thing is that these recipes, it's possible that they did measure their liquids and maybe they put a specific number of eggs, but I'm going to bet that the cooks who are making these knew how much. They just knew, like they knew how to cook. The recipes were not necessarily a complete manual for how to cook. They're more aimed at it's something to put in someone's library, right? This is the era of library collections. So yeah, quantities, yeah. Yep, okay, so we have our milk is in our pot, and so I'm going to go ahead and turn on the fire with my handy dandy modern flint and steel. And I'm not going to do this on high. It just says make it scalding hot. It actually doesn't say with a gentle fire or a low fire or, you know, hot coals or cool coals or anything like that. But so I want you to know something about milk. Milk will boil over. Milk that has been homogenized, especially, will boil over because a skin will form. A skin will form. And then that skin will in turn make it so that the steam can't escape when it starts reaching the boiling point. And so the milk will literally boil over because all of those bubbles that haven't escaped, all the hot air that's been generated that can't escape, just pushes it out. But it will only rise to a certain point. And so generally it's 1 to 4. So if you have a 4-liter pot, then you can put 1 liter of milk in it and it won't actually boil over even if it boils. And it kind of looks like maybe I've achieved that ratio, more or less. We'll see. Okay, let us move on to the grinding of our herbis. So I'm just going to take my rocket and I'm going to add it to my mortar. And I'm also going to, I have to fetch some more milk out of the larder. Fetch some more milk out of the larder. And I'm just going to actually put just a tiny bit of milk in here and see if that is sufficient. And then, so when I'm using the mortar and pestle, I use a combination of pounding and grinding, right? Pounding and grinding. And I do have more of this rocket. I really wasn't certain how much I would need. We wanted to, this is not supposed to give flavor per se, although it will obviously make it a green flavor. But what we're most interested in, of course, is the green color, and making it a nice rich green color. And you can already see that's already turning a really nice green. Smells nice too. Nice. Oh, well, it smells so green. Now, one of the recipes talks about straining the herbs, drawing the juice out. So we'll see how much I need to do that. It depends on, you know, how well the rocket actually breaks down in the mortar and pestle. Medieval mortars and pestles for kitchens were huge. They were big. They were literally, you stood and used them, not on the counter. The mortar was on the floor. The pestle was the size of a boat oar, a rowboat oar, and you literally stood and used the whole force of your body on it. So you could really process quite a lot in a medieval mortar and pestle of the kind they had for large kitchens. Oh, wow. The smell is so nice. It really smells so fresh and green. Really delightful. This would honestly, I can see that this will probably add not just a nice green color, but I really think it will add a nice fresh flavor to the larded, the larded milk, the latte lardus, or let lardus as it's spelled in this particular recipe. I'm just going to take a look at my milk. Keep an eye on it. By the way, if you put a spoon in your milk, in the pot with the milk that's boiling, it will actually prevent it from boiling over because it will break the surface tension and allow it to escape. And you know what? I think I'm just going to go ahead and do that. I just don't want to have to deal with milk cleanup on aisle 3. How many of you have had to deal with cleaning your entire stove because it's covered in overboiled milk? Yeah. Okay, let me just look at the comments. I use 5 eggs for every 1 cup of milk. For quiche? Really? That's a really egg-rich quiche. Interesting. Or PP Camus for what dish? Oh, yeah. There you go. Dill knows it. Yeah. Is your name a reference to the Barefoot Contessa? It is not, actually. So I belong to several medieval living history organizations in which I have earned the title and rank of Countess. And so it just seemed when I formed my business, the Creative Contessa, or my creative arts business where I was teaching cooking and dance and embroidery and that kind of thing, it just seemed like a natural thing to kind of riff off of my Contessa rank because I had a Florentine persona. So yeah, in fact, I didn't even know about the Barefoot Contessa when I came up with the title. Yeah. I am currently in Daegu, South Korea, so it's nighttime here. Some of you may have noticed. Oh goodness, just look at this. Oh, it smells so nice. It smells so green. Am I the only person who smells colors like this? It smells just so fresh and green. Just look at that. Isn't that gorgeous? But I'm looking at it and I'm feeling like if I add this, it's only going to make it a very pale green. So I'm going to just quickly fetch some more rocket from the fridge and I'm going to grind it up some more. But you can see, I mean, the rocket is gone. Like it is disintegrated. This is what I mean by mortars and pestles are the medieval food, are the food processor of the Middle Ages. The rocket is gone. It has become one with the milk. Okay, I'm just going right over here to fetch some more rocket. Not far at all. Please don't look at the plastic container it's still in. And I'm just going to add this straight in like this. And honestly, it's probably better to start with a smaller quantity anyway and add as you go along because it's depending on the size of your mortar. And, you know, obviously I have a personal size mortar, not an industrial medieval kitchen size mortar. So yeah. And I was going to wear an apron. I only have a modern apron though. It's super cute, but it's not very medieval. I don't have a medieval apron here, unfortunately. I need to make another one. I need to make another medieval kitchen apron. They don't look like modern aprons at all. They basically are like a pinafore, actually, is I think the closest thing. And it comes from the neck and it just hangs down over the body and they're loose and they're not fitted in any way, shape, or form, but they're not supposed to be. They're supposed to cover your clothes and they're supposed to allow you to wipe your hands on them. So hopefully I will remember that I'm not wearing an apron and not wipe my hands on the front of my dress, because when I'm wearing an apron, I do that. Am I the only one who does that? Do any of you also treat your apron like a towel and wipe your hands on it to either clean them off or wipe something off? Or yeah, it's a bad habit. I should really break myself of it. How'd I get electricity and internet? Man, the Middle Ages aren't as backwards as people think they are. Okay, grind. Checking. Yep, it's looking good. Okay, we have achieved scalded hot milk. So I'm just going to turn those. I'm going to pull the pots off of the fire, as the instructions say, for now, because the benefit of clay pots is that once they're hot, they stay hot for a long time. So while I'm working on extracting my juice from the rocket, I'm just going to turn those off and I'll turn them on again. I will put them back on the coals once we finish our juice extraction. You know, I really love working with a mortar and pestle. Am I the only one? Do any of you also like working with mortars and pestles? There's something just so absolutely gratifying. Yes, it takes way more time. It takes way more effort than a modern food processor, but there is just something about it that is much more satisfying. And of course, the smell is just wonderful. Oh, so good. Clay pots for the wins, exactly. Oh goodness, I can see I forgot to regulate the chat again. Well, that's my fault. I think I can fix that though right now, in fact. Yep, I'm just gonna go and fix the chat. Hold on a minute. That's on me. Okay, great. We'll fix it a little bit anyway. Okay, so the recipes for larded milk, they talk about, several of them talk about whatever herbs thou wilt. So other herbs that they had in the medieval kitchen are many that we've either forgotten about or considered to be weeds. Sorrel would be one of the herbs that they would actually make salads out of also. You could use sage, you could use, not that I recommend it, you could use pennyroyal. Parsley doesn't always mean what we think of as parsley either. There were different kinds of parsley, so it could actually be a wider variety of parsley than that to which we're accustomed now. In the US, we generally can get exactly two kinds, flat parsley and curly parsley, both of which are really parsley. So, yeah. So you can see that how that, oh, I can't, sorry, there we go. You can see how that just really turns into a lovely slurry pretty quickly. And if you don't know how to use a mortar and pestle, you can pound is one way, but you know, when there's a lot of more liquid in there, you don't want to pound because it's just going to splatter everywhere. And you literally just drag the pestle around the mortar, and you can actually grind things on the edge to really get it finer and finer. Use the whole mortar, not just the bottom. Use the sides too, is what I'm saying. For those who have not worked with a mortar and pestle before. But the mortar really and pestle just extract the best parts of your ingredients without causing things to go rancid from overheating. Because metal blades, when they spin really fast, they will heat up, and then that will impact the flavor profile and possibly also the health profile of your ingredients. Now, what you may not have paid attention to when I was doing or didn't realize I was reading when I read through one of the recipes, they talk about ways to make it different colors. And they actually say if you want it to be white, you should use amidon. Does anyone know what amidon is? Amidon is starch. So they actually, and it can be rice starch or it can be wheat starch. I'm trying to remember, or they had wheat starch and rice starch, and I'm trying to remember which one amidon is, but it is starch. And what's fascinating about the idea of having to make it white, right? It's milk. You would think, well, isn't that white? Not in the Middle Ages. Medieval milk was probably not pure white. Do you know why medieval milk was not white? Medieval milk was not white because they grass-fed their cows and they fodder-fed their cows. So their cows were eating what cows should eat and not being grain-finished and not being fed, supplemented with grain. So their milk was rich, and they were out to pasture. They were grazing. So their milk was rich in vitamins A and K, which makes your milk yellow in color. So, and of course, then also adding the eggs to it makes it even more yellow in color. So they're actually, if you want it to be white, they actually say you need to add starch to it to make it white. But there's also instructions in that same recipe for making it black. And oh, my Irish friends, my British friends are probably going to love this, especially if you like a traditional British or Irish breakfast, because it says to add blood that has been boiled and fried to make it black. So you add black pudding to it, literally, to turn your larded milk black. Ugh, I do not. Am I the only person who doesn't like blood pudding? I cannot stand this stuff. I loathe it with a passion. I do try it once a year. I try it again just to make sure that I still hate it. And invariably, I still hate it. Oh, the milk is off. Dilnoza, we turned the milk off. Fear not. Turned it off. I took it off of the coals, so it's fine. Yep, it's fine. So yeah, another interesting note on adding colors to this was the polnus, the paulnus. Paulnus is purple, so you could actually turn this purple with tournesol. Tournesol is a plant that was used for making pigments and paints and dye stuff. Coroprosa tinctorius, and it was also used to make that amazing blue ink that you see in medieval manuscripts. So they also used it in food specifically to make things a beautiful purple. So you can really make this dish into this gorgeous rainbow of stacked colors if you can get all of these dye stuffs. Now, Saunders is red sandalwood. I found out that red sandalwood is apparently not toxic, but white sandalwood is. So definitely, if you're going to do Saunders, make sure you get the red food grade sandalwood and not white sandalwood, and that will make it red. So you could really have just this beautiful, beautiful range of colors. Okay, so here is our, it won't slip out of my hands. Here is our slurry of green ground herbs ready to go. And I can see there's some left on the pestle, so I'm just going to convince those to be more one with everything else. And again, to do this, I actually added a little bit of milk to it, the way it suggests in one of these 3 recipes that we're looking at. Okay, there we go. Okay, fantastic. Okay, now that we have our green, do I like white pudding? I don't know what, I tried to have Philip from Irish Medieval History explain to me what white pudding is, and I'm still not certain how white pudding is different from black pudding. So I don't know if you even had white pudding, honestly. Susan asks, can you use spinach? Absolutely. Absolutely, you can use spinach. Spinach would break down maybe even more easily than rocket because it has even less, especially if you're using baby spinach, because it has even less fibrous resistance to it. Yep. In Ireland, we have black and white pudding, usually on a fry breakfast. Either love it or hate it. See, I know what black pudding is, and I still don't know what white pudding is. I don't understand what white pudding is because blood should not make white. So I don't understand the white part of the white pudding. Yeah. Black pudding, I definitely don't like. Definitely don't like white. You know, it's funny how many traditional cuisine foodstuffs that are now associated with parts of Europe as being quintessential to their culinary nature. Potatoes in Ireland and Germany, for instance. Tomatoes in Italy, for instance. That paprika, such an essential spice in so many, you know, in Hungarian cuisine. None of those are old world foods. They were all part of the Columbian exchange and didn't take up root in those places. And potatoes didn't become common in Ireland until the 19th century. And in Germany, I think not until the 18th or 19th century, right? Tomatoes, 18th century for Italy. So these foodstuffs that people think are, you know, quintessential to those countries' traditional cuisines are all new introductions from the Americas. Sorry. Are brown eggs better than white? I don't have any information on that. I don't know if brown eggs are better than white, honestly. I think what matters most is how the chicken lived its life. If the chickens were happy chickens, if they were free range and they were allowed to eat grubs and grass and whatever, maybe other chickens even in some cases, right? Like the things that chicken, and they were able to move around and chase each other, you know, live a happy chicken life, then their eggs will be better than chickens who are kept in cages and just fed grain, a constant supply of grain. Okay. I think I'm good with this. I'm just going to use, okay, they did not have rubber scrapers in the Middle Ages. They had wooden spatulas, which obviously don't have the same flexibility, but I can't stand to waste. So I'm definitely using a rubber scraper here to remove the excess from the pestle. Okay, great. And I'll show you a trick I use to get the rest of the liquid out in a bit. Okay, so thus our green slurry was born. Now, who knows if this is enough for green? I think I might find that maybe I will have wanted to grind more if I want a darker green, but we'll see. We'll see how we feel about it. Right, okay, your outfit looks vintage. 15th century French for the win, baby. Very vintage, like the original vintage. Ground oatmeal and fat without blood is white pudding. Interesting. Actually, Mobius, that doesn't sound so terrible, honestly. Now I want to try it. I mean, I will try anything that won't kill me once. I've eaten roasted bamboo or toasted bamboo worms and grilled squid sperm sacs in Thailand. I've had honey roasted silkworms here in silkworm grubs here in Korea. I've eaten roasted scorpions, not raw scorpions, right? I will eat pretty much anything once, as long as it's not guaranteed to instantly kill me. You know, it's just maybe not again after that, depending on the item in question. Okay, now let's go back to our recipe. So we are looking at the version where we toss shit in. Okay, so we now have our we've got our herbis, our use of herbis, which that thou will, so that they ben good, and we, yeah, so it says to draw it through a strainer. I'm trying to decide if I want to do that or not. I kind of don't think I do. I don't think I want to draw it through a strainer. I kind of like the idea of having, you know, that particulate matter in there and adding a little more nutritional density to the dish in question. Yeah. But medieval people loved things to be smooth and creamy and not to have chunks. And they weren't as concerned about retaining the micronutrients because they didn't even understand what micronutrients were, or even some of the macronutrients like fiber, right? So, you know, there's definitely a difference. Their view of what made foods healthy is definitely not based on the same scientific principles as our view of what makes foods healthy. I guess is an important distinction to keep in note. Ooh, shark fin. Oof, shark fin is kind of illegal, right? Depending on where you are. Oh, look, I've got green stuff on my sleeves. Well, we'll see if I can get that out, because it is being used as a dye, but thankfully vegetable dyes tend to be fugitive, so the stains do eventually come out. I was kind of worried that would happen. Not hideously concerned. Well, I needed to wash this anyway, so I guess it's getting a washing right after this live stream. Okay, so now we need to get our eggs, the whites and the yolks. And I'm going to do, I think I'm going to do one in each of these little pots, one in each of the little pots, and cast it to the milk. Draw them through a strainer and cast it to the milk. So there's two ways I could go about this. I could put it through the strainer into a separate bowl and then add it to the pot, or I could just strain it straight into the pot. I'm going to be a little lazy here because I don't want to be washing a million dishes. I don't have a dishwasher here. I'm the dishwasher. So I am just going to strain it straight into the pot. So I'm going to go ahead and take the lid off of that one. And for the saffron, interestingly, for the saffron, it says, you know what I'm going to do first? I have a second mortar and pestle. I'm going to do the saffron too. I'm going to do the saffron in the same way, even though it doesn't say it. I actually prefer to muddle my saffron beforehand. Reminder, this is our saffron. I like to muddle my saffron beforehand so that I have get maximum from the saffron. And I'm definitely not going to use all of these little guys. A little bit of saffron. Remember that a little bit of saffron goes a very long way. Okay, so now we're going to and grind the saffron in the mortar. Even though it doesn't call for that specifically, it's clearly something that they know, that they're familiar with the idea that you might want to grind your ingredients first in your mortar and pestle. Then, look at the container. I'm just going to add just a little bit of milk to loosen it up. And you can see immediately how yellow that gets. So even though the saffron itself is red, it creates a yellow dye stuff. And again, I have to decide how bright yellow do I want this to be. And also how saffron-y do I want it to be. So saffron does make things yellow, but it definitely gives it a flavor also. And I would say that saffron and rosewater are two very quintessential flavors of medieval dishes. You know, we use vanilla. Now I'd say vanilla and cinnamon are maybe quintessential flavors in Western European cuisine. But in the Middle Ages, rosewater was what they used in place of vanilla. And saffron, even though they did have cinnamon, saffron actually weirdly seems to be more common. At least in upper echelon. Again, saffron would have been crazy expensive. It would have been, in the 15th century, they had started growing saffron by the 15th century. There were saffron farms in Sussex, in England. What is it called? Saffron Weldon. Darn it, I never remember the name of this place. I've got a mental block about the name of this place in England where they started growing saffron in the 14th century, apparently. But it still would have been very expensive because, for those who don't know, saffron is the stamen of a special kind of crocus, just one kind of crocus, basically. And you actually have to manually harvest it and pick the stamina out. You can't, it's not, it has to be done very carefully because you don't want to damage the stamina. And you don't want to damage the bulb either because the bulb will create another plant, I think. I think they're perennials. And that's why saffron continues to be so expensive, because it can't be harvested by machine. It has to be done by hand. Okay, so that is the yellow we have thus far. I think I might actually like a little more yellow. Yeah, I'm going to go for a little more yellow. My saffron flavored cheese. Okay, I think the USA removed the natural protective layers of eggs. Yes, they do. Yes, they do. It's in the name. It's in the name of cleanliness. They wash the eggs, and that's because there was some kind of contagion. I don't know, probably some kind of bacterial thing that happened to be on the eggs and was giving people salmonella or something for a while, and so they decided that the safest thing was to actually wash the eggs, but the washing of the eggs removes the protective coating, which means you then have to refrigerate your eggs. Yeah. I lived in Germany for 12 years, so I got very accustomed to not refrigerating my eggs. Yeah, it's a nice buttery color. I love saffron. The other thing about grinding it this way is that if you just cast straight up saffron stamina into your milk, there's going to be like threads of saffron just floating around. And considering how medieval people liked everything to be smooth and not chunky and chewy generally, I really think that probably there might be an implication in the recipe that your saffron should be powdered first. And these are the sorts of details they don't necessarily feel they need to include, because everyone would have known it. So that's kind of the adventure of re-exploring medieval recipes, is there's a lot of prior knowledge is assumed. So a lot of, there's a lot of things you have to figure out as you go. And sometimes by reading through the 20 different recipes for one dish, you can you can fill in some of the gaps. So one recipe might have holes, the next one has holes, the next one has holes, et cetera, et cetera. But when you layer the recipes on top of each other, most of the holes might be filled. Not necessarily, but some of them will anyway. Okay, fantastic. Let's see. Okay, so we've got our, look away everyone. I love the taste of saffron, and it's in milk. It's yummy. Don't judge me. Okay. Here is our, yeah, here is our saffron milk. Okay, so we now have our green and we have our yellow. So let's turn back to our pots. Okay, I'm just going to go ahead and make them hot again, as the 15th century English would go. Okay, here we go. And therefore, I'm going to give a rinse to these because we're going to be using these again to grind spices. So I'm just going to pop over here. The other nice thing about granite, the stone pestles, is they wash really easily, and they don't rust. They don't tarnish, unlike metal ones, and they don't absorb flavors like wooden ones would. So there's a perk to using the granite ones, even though I don't really have any evidence of medieval mortars and pestles being made of stone. Now, that doesn't mean they weren't. I'm just saying I haven't found the evidence. So if you all have evidence of mortars and pestles being made of stone, please let me know. Are you going to do this with the other remaining herbs in the other plate you have there? Yes. So I've decided against using the crown daisies because I think it's too fibrous. I don't think it's going to break down really well. But we will be using the mortars and pestles for the spices because I definitely want to add some spices to at least one of them in recognition of the versions that have spices, just to add some flavor and whatnot. Yeah. Okay, so now we've got our eggs and we've got our strainer. Just rinse our strainer off because I used it earlier. Okay, so medieval strainers were fundamentally the same as modern ones in the sense of you have a frame, you have a metal wire mesh, and the thing goes through it. I haven't seen this specific shape in the few depictions of strainers I have seen, but it's the same idea. I do have one that definitely looks like the 16th century strainers with a wooden rim and the mesh on the inside, but it's huge. It's like this big. It's designed for industrial medieval kitchen use, so it's not going to work for our little stove here. So that's why I'm using this small one, because I don't want egg to go everywhere. I want it to go in the pot. So yeah, we've got our okay, our milk is approaching scalding hot again. Heat a little bit, maybe. I do love these clay pots so much. So basically, I'm going to be, ooh, this one has speckles. It's a speckled egg. So cute. I don't know if you can see the speckles or not. Yeah, you can sort of see the speckles. It's got freckles. It's adorable. Okay, so we will be, thank you for your sacrifice, egg. I'm going to crack this into the strainer straight into the pot because I don't feel like doing extra dishes. So let's see what happens. Let's see what happens. Love the granite ones. I have both metal and granite. So far, the metal one hasn't rusted and has been handed down to me by my grandmother, who used it probably for more than 30 years. I wonder, do you know what metal is made out of? Is it bronze or brass or cast iron? Or because cast iron, I would imagine would need some help. Yeah. Okay, let us almost. Yeah, just go ahead and get those hot. Okay, so the second, while we do that, let's talk about the cloth I have. Oh crap, where'd my cloth go? I had my beautiful linen cloth out for straining and I put it somewhere. So we need, thankfully it's not a rush because the curds can sit in the pot for basically as long as they're still warm, they'll be malleable. Aha, there it is. Got it. Okay, so for my straining cloth, I literally, just like the recipes call for, I just have a plain piece of linen. It's a piece of white linen, which means I can abuse the hell out of it and launder it until it's white again, no problem. But also if it's stains, who cares? This is literally my cheesecloth. So it is literally just a piece of plain white linen that I cut out. And someday I will actually hem it. Right now it's wearing away slowly as I launder it. So I swear to God, I am going to hem it someday. But I realized I need a second one because we're doing 2 colors. So let's go over here in my magic drawer of towel-like tea towel objects and pull out something that will work. Because I don't think I have a second linen cheesecloth. Because usually I don't usually dye the cheese different colors and then need more than one. But here we go. This will do. Yeah, I do use this also. So it's not linen, it's cotton, but it'll do. So I just want to have these on hand. And after this curdles, there we go. Scalding it is. Okay, we have achieved scalding. Okay, and I actually I could have put these in. I did bring I do have lots of wooden implements. I don't believe in plastic implements. I've got tons of them. Okay, so I didn't think about getting this closer for you all. Let's go ahead and see what happens. I'm actually, no, the pot's not deep enough for that. Okay, I'm going to have to do it in a separate bowl. Oh well. It's okay. I'm going to use the bowl that I used earlier to strain the milk. So I'm going to crack it. Okay, and then I'm going to actually use this wooden spoon spatula thing to actually push it through the strainer. And the thing about the strainer is I have no evidence of whisks in the Middle Ages. The closest thing to a whisk crops up in one of the art manuals from the 15th century. It actually says to take a stick and splinter the end to whisk your egg whites to make glaire. But I have no evidence of that in the kitchen. But they do use strainers, and I'll tell you, the strainer is really doing a pretty good job of mixing this egg really thoroughly. Yep. Wow. I don't know why I'm impressed. Like, I knew this is what was going to happen. I'm not actually surprised, and yet I'm still always impressed at how well it works. Right. And actually, this is a replica medieval spoon. Because this is round, I'm going to use that to try to push the rest through. It's fighting me. The egg is fighting me. It doesn't want to go all the way through. It's always that last bit, you know. There is something, I know everything takes longer. Honestly, I enjoy slow food preparation. I enjoy doing things by hand. I enjoy the tactile sensation of it. It's very relaxing. I fall into a trance. If you all weren't here with me, I would just literally be deep in my thoughts, thinking all sorts of interesting things, new projects, approaches I'd like to take for the next whatever kind of project, thoughts about the next place I want to travel to, right? I really enjoy the slow process of it. Okay, so just so you can see, this is what it looks like after it goes through the strainer. Yeah. Oh, you hate the smell of eggs and dishes? Yeah, I can imagine that. I can imagine that. I mean, yeah, the whisk is actually a revolutionary tool. The whisk enables all kinds of new dishes, honestly, because you can't get the level of variation with this that you can with a whisk. It's impossible. You can't do it. It just won't work, right? So the whisk really enables so much. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and add it in. So let's just review the recipe. It says, take the eggs, draw them through a strainer, check, and cast to the milk. Okay, we're casting to the milk. Scalding hot. Yeah, okay. I mean, we know what's going to happen. It's going to curdle. There's no way it's not going to curdle. Okay, let me show you what's happening here. Okay, so here is the egg. We added it to it. All right, okay. And next, I have some ideas about how I might do the camera differently next time. First time I'm doing this, so still figuring things out how to do this in this space. Okay, and then it says, draw the juices, and when the milk beginneth to cruda, and when the milk beginneth to cruda, casta the juice thereto. Okay, well, it looks like it's beginning to cruda, so I guess we're going to casta the juice thereto. Okay. Okay. A little bit of a mix. Yeah, it's definitely making it green for certain. Making my fingers green too. Okay, next, second egg through the strainer for the other part. Oh, I didn't use the speckled egg. Oh. Okay. And it's funny, the language here is to draw it through a strainer, and I'm not certain if that's a different understanding of the word draw in 15th century English, because you don't pull it through, you push it through. So I've always wondered about that, if it's just a different understanding of what draw means in this specific context. Yeah, this replica 15th century spoon is working really well with this rounded strainer. The medieval strainers that I've seen are not rounded, they are flat. So a spatula like this would certainly work really well with the flat surface, but because it's curved, you know, we've got to go with that. As always, this last little bit is just resisting so hard. A lot of recipes in medieval recipes that involve eggs often use just the yolks. And so people then ask me, well, what about the whites? Well, there was a whole industry involving egg whites. Artists used egg whites heavily in calligraphy and illumination, in glazes, glares. So I would suspect that actually in the kitchen they would save the whites and they would probably sell them to artists. I'm assuming there was probably a way, you know, there was a system of that, basically. Okay, and there is the egg drawn through the strainer. The second egg drawn through the strainer. Okay, and then as per the recipe, cast it there too. Put the coals back on here. One of the recipes actually calls for the pots to be pulled off, not that one, the pots to be pulled off of the stove, the coals rather, to be pulled off of the coals every time you go to do something. So not all the recipes tell you that, but it's kind of assumed that especially when you're cooking on a medieval hearth, when you add things to the pots, you're going to pull them off, add the things to the pots, and then put them back near the coals. And if any of you have ever worked with a fire, a medieval cooking hearth, and the pots, you will know that you're not generally going to add things to it while it's still on the fire or on the coals. You're going to pull it off the coals, add the thing, do the mixing and then put it back again. Okay, and then it says to add the saffron. Let me see. And if thou wilt have it yellow, take saffron and cast to the milk when it hath crudeth, and leave the saunders. Okay, well, it has started curdling, so in goes our saffron. Okay, and then I'm going to add some more coals to make the fire hotter, as it were. Okay. And so the yellow, definitely, I would say we would need a lot more yellow to make it bright yellow. Although, again, if this were really grass-fed milk or fodder-fed milk, it would already be yellow in hue. So adding the saffron would just add on top of that yellow. So there would have been more yellow to start with. Even though this was organic milk, it's not 100% grass-fed. So yeah, there is the saffron pot, and you can see the eggs have curdled. So now what we need to see happen is for the milk to curdle as well. And I'm just not seeing that yet. And I don't know that we're, honestly, as I said earlier, I'm not certain we're going to see it. I have a feeling that because the milk is homogenized, that I'm going to have to add an acid, which is interesting because if you read this recipe, several of these recipes, it says if you don't add eggs, then add an acid, add verjuice or ale. The implication being that the eggs should be a curdling agent, not just that the eggs themselves curdle, but that they trigger a curdling reaction. But because modern milk, the milk to which I have access anyway, is homogenized, it probably is preventing that reaction. And I was kind of mentally prepared for this, that this might be an eventuality. So we'll just see. We'll see what happens because it says, then seethe it well. Seethe it well, and seething is not just anger, it's boiling. It's the word for boiling. So yeah, exactly. If you add an acid, it curdles lickety split. Homogenization cannot fight the power of an added acid. But according to all of the recipes, the eggs should be enough to cause the curdling effect, which is what kind of interested me about this recipe, because I couldn't imagine that happening. I literally am like, I've never seen eggs cause milk to curdle other than the eggs themselves curdling. So we will give it a couple of minutes to see what happens. And if I'm not happy with the curdling effect, no problem. Then I have my backup acid. We'll add some acid to it. Michia, welcome back. Lovely to see you. Let me see. So when does the whiskey of twigs, the whisk of twigs start to be used? So the twig whisk, it's in the 15th century that I see that crop up specifically in art supplies, in making pigments and paints. I don't know when I don't know when the first, I'm going to assume by the 17th century they're doing whisks. Thinking about the kind of dishes that suddenly crop up in the 17th century, and maybe even by the end of the 16th century, because there's a recipe called snow, a dish called snow, which is egg whites and cream that's basically beaten into a creamy meringue, whipped cream kind of thing. And that's like end of the 16th century, sorry. So I'm pretty certain they must have some kind of whisk-like thing by the end of the 16th century that they're using. Yeah, good question, Takeda. Okay. Mobius, thank you for joining us. Appreciate it. You can watch the recording if you want to finish it up to see what else we get up to here. Okay, so let's look at this and see. It's certainly boiling. I'm just not seeing the separation that I would normally see when the whey pulls away from the fat and the protein. Just not seeing it at all. So I think, I don't know why I'm using that. I specifically got this for the more medieval option for the cooking implements, right? I'm just not seeing that. And yeah, I wish I had access. I had access to some raw milk, or at least unhomogenized milk, because I think we'd be seeing a different situation here. The heating alone denatures the milk and makes it really unstable when you bring it to a boil. Boiling is like, boiling is one of those magical points in chemistry. And you know, the nature of a substance can completely change in that what I call the weakened state, from a medieval perspective, the weakened state of the boiled substance. And so it should be ready to denature just because it's at the boiling point, and the egg should have triggered that, and it doesn't seem to have done so. In which case, I'm really leaning towards adding just a tiny bit of vinegar, because it's been seething for a little while now. It's been seething long enough that it should have done its thing, and we just have not achieved any kind of real separation. See how it's still milky? If it had separated, there would be clearish whey and big chunks, or bigger chunks anyway, because all we've got is the egg here. So it's just not, it's not curdling as they say. Oh, fire. Okay, no, don't do that. Bloody hell. Yeah, okay, so I think we're going to go ahead and add the acid. It's actually, remember, in one of the recipes that doesn't have eggs, it says to use several of them. It says to use ale or verjuice to turn it. So I'm just going to go ahead and grab my little acid, my little acid here. The closest thing I have to verjuice, unfortunately, is red wine vinegar. I know. I wish I could get some verjuice. Verjuice is the great. Those of you who are at the beginning, you know this. Verjuice is the juice of green grapes. So I'm going to see if I can bring the camera closer so you can watch the magic of the curdling, because it's a pretty magical process in my opinion. I love making fresh cheese because it's so fun. Okay, there we go. So I can actually turn these off now because they're clay pots and they'll retain their heat for quite a while. Okay, I've got two separate paddles. I've got my spatula with the green for the green, and I've got my spatula with the saffron for the yellow. So I want to try to remember to keep those separate. Okay, doesn't take much. It really doesn't take much of an acid, especially when you've reached the boiling point like this. In fact, you can see it's already just that tiny bit of acid, and it's already separating out, right? Look at that. Yep. Here it goes. I knew. Tiniest bit of acid, and there we have full curdage happening. Full curdage. Yep. So now we have curds, right? The thing about curds, especially if you're making a cheese like this, or a block like this, you don't want to have lots of little curds. So if you stir with kind of a folding motion like this to encourage the curds to stick together rather than to become like ricotta cheese, right? Yeah, see, like I said, it doesn't take much. Okay, and then I will add it to just a tiny bit, not much. And almost instantly, we start to see the denaturing of the milk, separating the protein and the fat out into one set of lumps, and the whey into another set. Now, whey can be used for a variety of things. You can use whey in soup, the whey that separates out from your milk. You can use it in soup. Some people save it and actually use it as a beverage. They like, because it's a little sweet, actually, because this hasn't been cultured. So they will actually use it as a beverage. You can use it. I've heard some people try to use it in lacto fermentation, but I don't know anything about that specific application myself. If you know about other uses for whey, drop them in the comments. I'm always interested in ways to not waste, ways to not waste byproducts of cooking that are potentially still very useful. Actually, this is resisting even more. It's resisting. So when you're doing this kind of curd, if it's resisting actually curdling, just turn the heat back on, because it will definitely force it to do what it needs to do. And you can see here, yeah, look at those curds. Look at those curds. Okay. So I think I'm already seeing that if I want a more even green, I probably should have filtered out the particulate matter from the rocket. Whatever, I'll keep that in mind for next time. And maybe more of the juice to make it even greener. And definitely for the saffron, it's made this beautiful light yellow color, but clearly if I want a bright yellow, then I would need a lot more than what I put in there. And that's why I always tell people when we talk about saffron as a dye stuff for fabric, and they talk about how every Irishman in 16th century Ireland had a saffron dyed shirt. Abso-freaking-lutely not. Absolutely not. They could have had yellow shirts dyed with weld or some other much cheaper and much more commonly available weed that would produce yellow, but saffron is insanely expensive and it takes a lot of saffron to turn an entire length of fabric yellow. Seriously. So no, not every Irishman or woman was wandering around with a yellow smock, or léna as they were called in 16th century Irish. Only the very upper crust could afford that. Everyone else, if it was yellow, it was a number of other native dye stuffs that grow in Ireland, literally like weeds, that they would use to dye their things yellow if they wanted them yellow. Okay, yeah, just a little bit more. There we go. That's starting to definitely achieving the level of curtilage that we want to see. Yeah. So let me just show you what these curds look like. See, it is a lovely shade of yellow. It's a nice gentle yellow, nothing aggressive, shall we say. But if you want brighter yellow, it's clear you need more saffron. But it's still interesting to think that, you know, the color that something looks is not actually the color that it yields in the final product. That's a good reminder to keep in mind. And in many cases, the color that you get from a substance like a root or a petal is actually achieved by making it more acid or more base, rather than by using whatever the original color of the substance is itself. For instance, did you know that you can make natural blue food dye by juicing a purple cabbage and adding a little bit of baking soda to it to make it alkali, and then it turns blue? And then you have an all-natural food dye that you can add to anything that you want to turn, any food you want to turn blue without it being with artificial synthetic chemicals. Okay, right. So next step is to do, and I'm going to move the camera back again. I'm going to be working over here. Next step is to strain. So we're going to be straining it, and we're going to be straining it into our cloth. So we have our two, to review, we have our two cloths. The one is linen. It's literally just a square of linen, white linen. And the second one, because I only have one linen cheesecloth at the moment, is just a tea towel, a cotton tea towel, which works also perfectly well. Okay. Smells a little rancid, actually. I think I need to wash it again. Okay, grab a different one then. Yeah, that smells better. Okay. Okay. Oh, Han, you're welcome. Welcome back. Good to see you. It looks like scrambled eggs and makes me hungry. Yeah, we'll have to, we'll definitely have to see what happens here. We'll definitely have to see what happens here. Okay. So we're now going to do what it says next. I'm going to go ahead and just read that off to you all. So it says, when it is cool, use the verjuice to turn it. So it's funny because one recipe says when it is cool, tie it up stoutly in a piece of cloth or net and give it whatever shape you wish, flat or long, weighted with a long rock. The other recipes, do they say anything about the temperature? No, it just says this is the recipe that suggests that you add amidun, starch, to it if you want to make it white, or boiled and fried blood if you want to make it black. Let me see. And then it says nothing about letting it cool before laying it in the cloths. And this one says let me see, add to the pot, press them all together. And if the Then it says strain it in a cloth, beat it, bait on the cloth with a ladle or a skimmer to make sad or flatta. So my experience is that once it gets cold, it gets much harder to mold. How many of you have made paneer, for instance? Have you also found that it's much easier to mold when it's still somewhat warm than when it gets completely cold? So I'm actually going to go ahead and do the straining now. Let it cool enough so that I'm not burning my fingers when I get to the molding phase. But otherwise, yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and strain it now. So I'm just going to rinse this strainer. So this is my technique that I'm about to show you for straining curds out. And obviously, it's not really made particularly clear how one should strain these curds in the medieval recipe. Again, it's assumed that you know the technique. So what I do is I take my strainer, I lay the cloth in the strainer, and I put that over a bowl. Complete straining kit. Bowl, strainer, cheesecloth on top, right? And then I go ahead and if you're cooking with clay pots, do not grab them with your bare hands. It is not like a modern steel pot that has a nice insulated handle. I almost did that right now. That would have been an interestingly viral moment, possibly. Okay, so we're now going to take our clay pot with hand protection, and I'm just going to dump that into the cheesecloth. Oh, I'm sorry, I should have shown you. I'll show you. Make sure I show you on the next one. There's a couple of curds left in here, and I'm going to go ahead and add these in here. Now, what I find very interesting is the addition of the eggs to this dish and how you don't have to. It actually says you don't have to add the eggs. I'm assuming the eggs are the curdling agent, even though they didn't function that way here, and that they add extra protein. Okay, so the next thing I do is, if this were very liquidy, and it's a little bit liquidy, so we're going to let it strain a little bit. So I just make a little satchel with the ends of the towel, like this, two little knots, and then I'm actually going to hang it. I'm going to hang it off of my sink, my sink faucet, because that's what I have, what I can do here with what I have. Right, so now we've got a little package like this. Okay, and I'm just going to hang it off of my sink faucet while we deal with the other one, and then we can do some manual straining if necessary. So I'm just going to pop over here. Although this towel is little and doesn't leave me much to work with here. So I'm just going to hang it from something else. I used to have, in my last apartment, I had a wall of hooks that I could hang things from. It was great. I'm just going to hang it here from this implement. Totally legitimate. Okay, so next layer is, again, bowl, strainer, cheesecloth. And once again, not grabbing it with my hands because I like my fingerprints intact. And this is definitely going to turn this yellow. I can see the yellow in the way from the saffron, but that's okay. Which might make me want to keep the off drippings even more because it's saffron flavor. It's also very vinegary. Well, not very, it's slightly vinegary. It's okay. Okay. Oh, wow. My cheesecloth ended up dipping in my little container of olive oil for frying later. Oh, well, it's fine. Again, I make my little sachet by just tying the corners to each other with just a very simple, loose, not particularly tight knot. And then we will hang it up just for it to drain a little bit. Ta-ta! You don't want to drain it too much because you do need a little, you need it to be moist enough to actually manipulate it, to actually form it into, as the Ménager de Paris says, as the Goodman of Paris says, to mold it into whatever shape you wish. Just hands not on my dress like I was about to. Yeah. So the Goodman of Paris says about molding it, he says, when it is cool, tie it up stoutly in a piece of cloth, well, we already tied it off, or net, and give it whatever shape you wish, flat or long. So this is a detail that's left out in pretty much all the others, is that the idea that you shape it, and you shape it into a shape that you would like. And remember that in the other ones, it talks about actually layering the colors. So do color 1, then color 2, and then color 3, color 4, so that you create this layered rainbow effect, and then press them all together. So I am going to do that with this one. I want the nice green and yellow layered effect, but that's why I'm just letting them dry separately first, or drain separately first, and then I'm going to mold them separately, and then I'm going to layer them together to actually press together and become one. And I'll show you my very sophisticated weighted pressing system. Yeah, it will impress you. Hint, it involves cutting boards and sandwiching. But these are still a little too moist. So I'm just going to go ahead and show you the drain off. Like I said, it's very yellow from the saffron. It's actually, it tastes pretty good. It's sweet, and it definitely has hints of saffron in it. So, I mean, it's not super sweet. It's, it's the sweet of the way, right? Let me see. Oh, goodness, I missed a whole bunch of stuff. Oh, goodness, okay. Goodness, okay. Sorry, I did miss a whole bunch of stuff. Yep. Yeah, I do have a rather small kitchen to work in. Yeah, this is what we call in American English a one-butt kitchen. Yeah, I'm used to a much bigger kitchen, but right now I'm in hopefully temporary living circumstances. I do hope soon to be moving into much more accommodating accommodations, shall we say, and that will improve all of our live streaming efforts immensely. Right, okay, so are there any questions thus far? Right. So I promised that we would do some spices. So while those are thinking about draining, I'm going to go ahead and rinse out my granite mortar and pestle. Granite mortar and pestle. How long do you wait for this recipe now? So basically, we're going to drain these just a little bit, and I can feel where they need to go. Like there's a point at which you can tell that it's still malleable, but it's not sopping wet. And I want to reach that point. And so I'm going to take this opportunity to grind some spices while those drain out, because technically these are actually, I know you're going to have to wait to see the final results, everyone, because they need to press overnight, right? A cheese like this needs to press at least overnight to achieve a proper firmness, because remember, we then slice it and fry it. Yum. So I'm just going to take this opportunity to grind some spices, because I'm now going to add some spices to one of them, because I love some of the other recipes had spices in them, and I really like that idea. So I've got some cinnamon here. I'm just going to go ahead and grind the cinnamon with okay. So, you would think, I know people would think, wow, you're gonna take that stick and grind it. Well, it's lots of little delicate leafy layers, actually, so it goes pretty quickly. So with cinnamon, I do pounding, actually, and I'm sorry if this gets loud. Let me know if it's too loud. Let me know if it's too loud, right? So first I pound the cinnamon. And then once that's broken down into and so you can see what I meant by leafy layers, right? Nothing like cassia cinnamon. For those who missed my ingredients towards the beginning, there are 2 different kinds of cinnamon. One is actual true cinnamon. That's what this one is, also called Ceylon cinnamon. It comes from the bark of it is the bark of the cinnamon tree. The other is cassia. Ceylon cinnamon is the one with all the health benefits. Cassia is not. Ceylon is much more expensive because it's much more labor intensive to actually prepare once after it's harvested. And cassia has a compound that will actually cause liver damage over time. So yeah, there is a difference. Also, cassia is a much more aggressive cinnamon flavor. It's sort of that red hot cinnamon flavor, if you know whereof I speak. Ceylon cinnamon is a much more refined, delicate, more subtly flavor, as they would say in 15th century English. By the way, if you grind enough ingredients with a mortar and pestle, you will develop amazingly sexy forearms. Just saying. If you never thought about your forearm as a potentially attractive part of your body, you will once you've done enough mortar and pestle grinding. As you can see, it actually goes relatively quickly. I mean, obviously not as quickly as it would in, say, a coffee grinder, which I know what a lot of people would use, but I'll say it again for those who weren't here earlier. Using a mortar and pestle will give you a whole different flavor and a different set of flavor compounds than the fast, hot metal blades of a modern powered food processor will. Right? This does not heat your spices up to the point where some of those fatty acids actually go rancid, go off, and can therefore become inflammatory. Literally will cause inflammation in your body if you consume enough things prepared that way. So, see, we went from stick to powder pretty quickly, pretty easily. In a kitchen, in a medieval kitchen, say a kitchen of a great house, a castle or a manor or a palace, a palazzo in Florence, for instance. In a kitchen like that, there would be one person basically whose whole job was spice preparation, because spices are always better purchased whole. They retain their flavor for longer. They're also cheaper if you purchase them whole. And so they would purchase their spices whole, and then there would be someone whose sole job basically was to grind stuff, to grind spices, to grind almonds, to grind grain. Corn, as it's called in medieval English, by the way. Corn is not synonymous with maize in medieval English, in Middle English. So there was one person whose sole job was basically this, and they could eventually get promoted, obviously. But this was a separate position in the kitchen. Medieval kitchens were highly specialized workforces. The pastry maker was not the same as the head cook, was not the same as the person who was in charge of roast, was not the same as the person who was in charge of making sauces. Right? It was a well-oiled machine. Oh, yeah. Gosh, I wish you guys could smell this. It smells amazing. And again, with this kind of mortar and pestle they would have had in a medieval kitchen, which would have been much bigger than this would go really quickly. See, there's our cinnamon. And hold on, sorry, I just inhaled some cinnamon dust. Oh my goodness. Now, the way I prefer to get cinnamon, herbs, spices out of the mortar and pestle is actually with a little pastry brush. But I actually don't think I know where my pastry brushes are at the moment. They're packed up somewhere, I think. Like I said, we're living in a kind of temporary situation. And this, I think, is a paintbrush. Well, maybe this is what I'm using. Okay. I don't have a pastry brush, but I've got this. So, and I don't know if they would have done this in the Middle Ages. On the other hand, they absolutely had brushes. They absolutely would have had access to brushes. So it just makes sense to me as the best way to get everything out of your mortar that you would do this. You wouldn't waste spice. Of course, if I had a liquid and I would actually put the liquid in here, use it to get all the spice, and then add the liquid to wherever it's going. But that's not the way things are going right now. Now, if I cared about, how this spice then impacts the next set of spices, I would rinse out the mortar, but I don't, because, you know, medieval spice blends are absolutely a thing. Poudre douce, which means literally sweet, a sweet or soft powder, is a blend of multiple different of these very fragrant herbs. Oh, this is mace. I should talk about what I'm doing. This is mace. This is the covering of nutmeg, and it's used much more commonly in medieval cuisine than nutmeg is. It has a sharper, spicier flavor actually than nutmeg. Nutmeg is more mild than mace is. Mace is definitely a stronger spice for certain. Okay, let me just look at the questions. Let me see. Oh goodness, I really have missed a whole lot. I missed a lot of stuff. Okay, if you all had questions for me and I missed them, I'm so happy you guys are enjoying the live stream and chatting with each other. That's fantastic. Obviously, since I'm in the process of cooking and explaining, I'm missing some things in the chat. So if you have specific questions for me, please go ahead and pop them in the chat again now, and I'll actually pay much closer attention. I will pay much closer attention. With the cost of some spices, I do not doubt they would maximize in getting it all used. Yeah, precisely. Considering it's like in the 14th century in Germany, there are records of black peppercorns being used as a payment for someone's annual salary. So that should tell you how much a peppercorn was worth in 14th century Germany, for instance. Yeah. Oh, wow, this mace smells amazing. Again, I'm sorry if that hammering is loud. Probably actually I need to stop hammering at 9 o'clock. I probably need to not hammer the spices anymore. Live in an apartment, you know, my neighbors, I don't want my neighbors to hate me. I want to be a good neighbor. Not so much that I don't want them to hate me. I want to be a good, considerate neighbor. So maybe I'll stop pounding the spices. I wish I could convey the smell to you. So someday there will be live streaming with smell. Julian of Norwich. Yeah. Yeah, immurement. Yeah, immurement. Great word, Han. Immurement was a rare form of execution for anyone, but it certainly did happen. Elizabeth Báthory, the Blood Countess of 16th century Hungary, sorry, not 16th century Hungary. Wallachia, she was absolutely immured. She was walled up as a punishment for her horrific crimes. My God, what a character, Elizabeth Báthory. Okay. So this isn't as finely ground as I can get it, but looking at the time, I definitely don't want to, you know, wake up my downstairs neighbors. They have kitties downstairs. I don't want to upset her. The little calico kitty downstairs escaped her apartment 6 months ago. And because the door was open and she got confused and she came to my apartment door and was howling outside the door. I opened the door. I had no idea what was going on. And she ran into my apartment. And my kitties were so excited to meet a new kitty. And they've been trying to meet up with her ever since. Okay, sure. I've just brushed it into a little pile so you can see it. And I'm going to actually put this in a separate dish so that I can control the ratios, as it were, of these spices. Now, a medieval brush, there's a couple of different ways that medieval brushes were made. And I don't know about pastry brushes particularly, but brushes in general for painting, you could actually make them with feathers. You could also they were made with the hairs from a variety of very specialized animals, such as sables and other, what's the word I'm looking for? Those little creatures, weasels, other kinds of weasels. And I've actually seen medieval brushes made. It's not hard, actually. So yeah, brushes were something that would be relatively easy to make, actually. Okay, there is our ground mace. Oh, wow. Amazing how wonderful freshly ground spices smell. Okay, next up are cloves. And I understand that so I'm going to try to press instead of pound violently. I understand, of course, that in the modern world, it can be very time consuming to hand grind all of your spices as you need them. So obviously the modern convenience of having pre-ground spices is fine. It's just that the second you grind a spice, you expose all of its flavoring compounds to oxidation. And so it starts breaking down and losing flavor and going stale. In some cases, the fatty acids that you expose might actually also, as I said, oxidize and go rancid, making it no longer healthy for you to eat those ground spices. So if you have ground spices, keep them in a dark and cool place. Ideally, refrigerate them, honestly, especially if you're not using them with any sort of frequency. The refrigeration, keeping it cool, will prevent the oxidation of those fatty acids and will preserve the flavor compounds for longer. So just a little hint on spice storage. But as I said, medieval spices were sold whole in their whole original form. I mean, it's just easier to transport a sack of whole cloves than it is to transport a barrel of ground clove powder, you know. Yeah, definitely would be easier if I could just hammer away at this. But again, considerate neighbor and all that. Okay. And interestingly, black pepper is also mentioned. So I'm going to get some black pepper corns out and grind those out. For those who don't know, peppercorns have nothing to do with capsicum, with the chili peppers. Absolutely nothing to do with any of the New World pepper plants. Obviously, black pepper got the name first, and basically what ended up happening is that when chili peppers were brought over, people tasted them and thought they had a kind of semi-similar fire to peppercorns, and so the name got transferred across. But peppercorns do not come from the chili pepper plant at all. They're actually a vine, an opportunistic vine that grows in the jungles in Sri Lanka and also in mainland India. Well, India. Sri Lanka is not part of India. And the thing that makes them black is that they're basically sunburnt. Yeah. Okay, so these are peppercorns. I'm just going to put some in here, grind them up. Okay. Now, some of these recipes did call for the addition of salt, and I am actually going to go ahead and add some salt when we get to the molding stage, which is about to happen now. We're just going to kind of massage the salt into it because I definitely like salted things. But it's not just about the flavor. In medieval cuisine, salting was a very important method of food preservation, right? It retards microbial growth. It also in several different ways, one of which is that it sort of literally sucks the moisture out of their little bodies, the microbes' bodies, so they literally die because the moisture has been taken out of their body. Okay, see how quickly that went? Freshly ground pepper. It smells so good. So peppercorns are not just they're a flavor enhancer for certain, but they're more than that. Pepperine is one of the primary active compounds in peppercorns, and pepperine helps with the absorption of micronutrients. So by adding black pepper to your food, you're actually making it more bioavailable to your body. So yes, it improves the flavor, but it is absolutely a health promoting spice, literally. Yep. Okay. Pepper, fresh ground pepper. Okay. So we have our spices now all ground up and ready to go for various applications. So now it is time to do the pressing. Mortar and pestles going here. These are cool enough that I can stack them and put them here. So this is a hand-turned wooden trencher that I bought here in Korea. Isn't it beautiful? Gorgeous, right? Yeah. Didn't pay much for it either. I mean, it was handmade by a local turner, literally around the corner from me. I think I paid 20 bucks for it, and it's beautiful. It's really a beautiful wood too. Yeah, really nice. Okay, so we're going to follow the instructions that say to lay one on. Okay, so I'm actually going to take this and I'm just going to give it a final squeeze here. I just kind of twist, wring it like that. And one of the instructions actually says to wring out the moisture. So I'm wringing out the moisture. Okay. And now I'm going to put it here on this. You know what? I think I'm gonna do it with flat ones actually. I'm just go grab 2 different little cutting boards. So I'm going to do flat. See, I thought I had all of the equipment out and I clearly didn't. Oh well. Okay, cutting board number 1. So at this point, I undo the knots in my cheesecloth because I no longer need to hang it. And see, this is what the curds now look like. Okay, so I'm just going to lay that out. And I'm going to actually use my fingers to flatten it into a shape. Right? Because it actually says, as the Ménagier de Paris says, make it into whatever shape thou wilt. So I actually mold it together so that the curds go from being, you know, separate little chunks into an actual unit, right? And I kind of use the fabric to make like envelope to really get those ends like this. Tommy, you're not going out. You went out earlier. Freaked the neighbors out. Envelope and mold that all together. Okay. And it does say, I know the instructions say to beat it with a strainer, or what else was it, a ladle, but again, it's 9:13 at night here, and I think my neighbors will really not appreciate me beating it with a ladle. I'll have to pick recipes that don't involve violence for this particular showtime. Okay, it's interesting that we are finding that all the tricks used to save labor time that changed how we make food can be increasing rates of health problems. Dorothy, 100%. No, you don't need to be quiet. I agree with that 100%. Absolutely. The way food is mass prepared and produced, we no longer sprout and ferment grains and pulses the way we used to. We've stopped preparing things in a way that actually makes them healthy for us and started preparing things in a way that actually creates health issues. Okay, so here we have our first little square. Okay, so I'm just going to put this one to the side for now. We'll come back to it. We're going to get the second one. Okay, here's the second one. See, look at the little ball it's already made. Okay, time for it to be molded into something else. Okay. And it's possible that there may have been a cheese mold, that some people may have had a cheese mold for this, but the way they talk in these instructions, it doesn't sound like they were using a cheese mold at all, interestingly. So I just sort of massage the curds to convince them to come together as one. And I really do feel like it works much better if they're still a little warm or warm at all, which is why the recipe that said for them to cool first was a little curious to me. Because I find that once they're cool, they don't play anymore. Once they cool down, the curds will not let themselves be bonded or molded to anything without a crap ton of mechanical pressure, I guess. Which, I guess if you had a wine press, you could make it work. I have to say, I did kind of enjoy the idea of beating it with a ladle or a strainer, but again, downstairs neighbors. Okay. So I am now going to just sprinkle on a little bit of salt here. I actually meant to do this before I got talking. I got distracted, everyone. I meant to do this before I molded it all together, but I'm not unmolding it just to add it in. And I'm going to add a little bit of mace, just like that. Some pepper. And a little bit of cinnamon. Yep. And a little bit of cloves. And I hope to find some happy pork belly that I will try this recipe again and then add the chunks of pork belly into it. I think that'll make it really amazing and will completely change its nature. But as I said earlier, we don't have that as an option. Okay, now I'm going to take the yellow layer that's already this together. Get all these little pieces together. Wrap it up again. And here we go. Make my little envelope with the fabric and the cloth to kind of act like an impromptu kind of cheese mold. I see some curds are trying to be naughty, wandering away from the unit of the block. Come on, curds, play ball. Team effort and all that. Okay. And now I'm just going to press it. Sort of apply a more gradual pressure than pounding it with a ladle or a strainer. Okay. I actually have an ancient Roman replica of an ancient Roman cheese mold in my belongings, which are in storage in the US at the moment. It's really nice. It makes round cheese, actually, and I have used it to make this kind of cheese before. Okay. So now I'm going to sandwich it. I'm going to leave the cloth on, as it says. I guess if I was going to use one of the cloths instead of the other, I should have used the linen. Oh well. There it is. Not undoing it now. Okay. Some of these curds have fallen out. I have to eat them. Terrible. Okay. So now we add the second board and we will weight it. And let it press overnight. So this is my official cheese board. So I'm going to set it up on the table over there with some heavy stuff on it. Yeah, so that's basically what I do, is I set it up like this and I put whatever heavy thing I have available. Sometimes it's another pot with other pots in it. In this case, it actually said to put a stone on it. I guess I could go get some stones from outside. Okay, I'm trying to think what heavy crap I have. I don't think we have any of the fossils here. I think they're in storage too. I actually have some actual fossils from Germany that we could have used. Yeah. Okay, so cheese is going to settle overnight, and I'll let you know how that goes. Okay, are there any questions about our larded milk, our lardy milk? Let lardis, milk lardons. Let's see, what other possible spellings do we have? Let lardis, let te lardis, whatever we want to call it. Any questions about it? Otherwise, we're going to move on to our next recipe, for which I'm just going to go ahead and actually clean out our pan here, because I'm going to use another of our clay cooking pans. I think I'm going to use, I think I'll use this one because I think it actually has a bigger capacity. So I just need to wash this quickly. Yeah, I'm very excited to try this herbed and spiced and flavored cheese tomorrow, to slice it and fry it, see how it looks, dress it with some pine nuts, as it says to do in the Ménage de Paris. So I might do that as part of my medieval sewing party tomorrow, actually, because it should be good to go by tomorrow, I think, by tomorrow morning. So yeah, very, very interested to see how it turns out. And I was thinking if I'd actually had the pork belly to add into it, when you slice it and fry it, then the fat from the pork belly would render and it would just get super tasty. Just completely infuse the dish, and especially when you have all those sweet spices in there in combination with the pork belly. What a wonderful exotic dish. What a delicious, delicious combination of sweet and savory and fat and all the good things, you know? So yeah, I'm definitely keeping my eye out for a source of happy pork, of happy pork belly. Sometimes at Costco here in Korea, they actually do have what they call animal welfare pork belly. Usually, though, that's in line. What is Chuseok? So they might have some now. Fortunately, it's a big expedition to get to the Costco for us because we don't have a car, and none of the so-called close Costco is not on the metro line, and the far Costco is at the end of the metro line, plus a couple of kilometers of walking. So it's a bit of an odyssey to get to a Costco, and I just don't want to take a whole day to go shopping at Costco, unfortunately, because I love Costco's things. Their stuff is awesome. Maybe cats like the smell of cheese. Yeah, my cats love cheese. They also like butter. If I leave the butter uncovered, there will be nose and tongue prints in it in the morning. Just saying. Okay, you can try using a grinder. Let me see. Are the cats meowing for food? Oh, no. No, they are not. No, what, Nobby? Nobby, why are you meowing at me? What? No, they want to go out. The cats want to go outside. They want to go out into the foyer so they can go and socialize with their friend downstairs in the downstairs apartment. That's what they want. They do not want food. They have food. And they just realized they have food. Good God. Welcome to my life, everyone. This is my life. Okay. Questions about our let lardis? Otherwise, we're going to move on to our final dish of the evening, our second dish and final dish. Zabaglione. So zabaglione is for those of you who are familiar with Italian cuisine, a modern Italian cuisine, it is a modern dish, but it is also a medieval one. 15th century Neapolitan recipe is the earliest recipe I found. This recipe is contained in a book I've discussed in my book corner before, the Neapolitan Recipe Collection, Cuoco Napoletano, edited by Terence Scully, who is an expert in medieval cuisine, and has published many other fine works. Can highly recommend his opus of research work, because he does the very wonderful thing of providing you with the original, a transcription of the original, plus a translation, plus commentary and extra information. So this is an anonymous recipe of collections that is from Naples. So this is hypothetically Neapolitan, Napolese cuisine, right? And it's not very much like modern Neapolitan cuisine, because in the 15th century, Naples was a rich and powerful court. So got a hair clinging to my nose and it's making my nose itch. Naples was a rich and powerful court ruled by the Aragonese at this point. It was cultured, it was erudite, very powerful, and this was before Naples was basically impoverished by the unification of Italy. So yeah, Naples was a whole different place than it is now, basically, and the cuisine was very different. So this is the last recipe that is contained in the collection of recipes. I will read to you the translation because it's in, I mean, I guess I could read to you. Okay, I'll read. Would you like me to read to you the 15th century Italian? I do actually speak Italian, so I would not butcher the pronunciation. Let's go ahead and read to you the Italian. Okay, so here's the original recipe. Zabaglione. Per fare 4 tasi di zabaglione, piglia 12 rossi di uova fresca, tra 11 de zucchero e mezza onza di canela buona e una boccale di vino buono dolce e fallo cuocere tanto che sia preso come un brodetto. E poi levalo fuori e ponelo in uno grande piattello davanti agli compagnoni. E se vorrei, gli potrei ponere un peso di butiro fresco. Okay, which translates to make 4 cups of zabaglione, take 12 fresh egg yolks, 3 ounces of sugar, a ½ ounce of good ginger, 1 beaker of good sweet wine. Cook them together so that they form, so that it becomes thick. And then put it in a big dish in front of your companions. And if you like, you can add a piece of fresh butter on top. Yes, I do like. Anything with butter is better. So yeah, that is what we're going to be making. It's actually a simple recipe, and it's almost exactly the same as Zabaglione is now. It is a wine egg custard. So the first thing it says is take 12 egg yolks. Now, I'm here all alone. I'm not going to make 12 egg yolks worth of Zabaglione just for me. I know I'm not going to feed it to the cat. So we're going to take 8 egg yolks. But basically, it says to just put them all in a pot, right? It says to put everything in a pot and then cook it together. And that makes sense. It doesn't say anything about a strainer. But again, no whisks in this era. So I'm going to go ahead and assume that the idea of the strainer is built into the recipe because there are no whisks in this era in Napolese cuisine, as far as I know, right? Neapolitan cuisine, as far as I know. So I'm going to use the strainer to put everything into the pot, or at the very least to put the egg yolks into the pot so that they are best mixed. Where can we find these books? I would check on Abe Books and Barnes and Noble to start. Oh, but you're in Tajikistan. Check Abe Books and Barnes and Noble to start. Yeah, but maybe also Interlibrary Loan. Even in, I assume that maybe you have access to Interlibrary Loan. There might be universities in Tajikistan actually that have this book in their collection. So I would also check with Interlibrary Loan. 100%. Yep, 100%. I don't know if there's an online version, but it's worth checking. If you do I know we all hate Google these days, but if you do a Google book search, you might find if there's an online version of this. There could be, I don't know, but try Interlibrary Loan. Remember, no matter where you are, if you have access to a university library, and often university libraries will let you become members of the library, even if you're not a student. They'll let you get a membership. So go to your local library, see about Interlibrary Loan, see if they can get you this book or any of the books that I recommend, right? The Neapolitan Recipe Collection. Yeah. Oh, thank you, Dilnoza. I don't know if the Italians feel the same way. My reading was pretty rough there because I was stumbling over some of the Napolese spellings, the Neapolitan spellings. Okay, so we have our strainer. Check. We have our eggs. So I'm going to go ahead and separate these out now. Gosh, I'm going to have a lot of egg white omelets over the next couple of days. Pretty bowl. Looks kind of like Maiolica, right? I got it from Burlington Coat Factory for like $1. So it actually has a lid that goes with it too. Okay, so I'm just going to put this all here, put it straight into my pot, as it were. Whites will go, okay, right? Whites will go in here. And you want as little white as possible because the white will, and this is why it's funny, it doesn't say to strain it, but a lot of recipes for a custard like this do say to strain it because it's unlikely you'll get every last bit of white out. What am I doing? This is a much better method. It's unlikely you're going to get every last bit of white out. And so that white is going to curdle and it will create an unpleasant texture in your custard. So a lot of modern recipes for all kinds of custards, including lemon curd, will actually tell you to strain it after you have cooked it. And they clearly have strainers and they know how to strain things. So I absolutely recommend going that route if you can. If you would like to have a smooth curd, rather a smooth custard, then definitely, oh gosh, how many did I make? One. I started cracking eggs and talking and that was all she wrote. Okay, 4. Okay. All right, so if you want a nice smooth custard with no chunks of protein in it, then strain it after it is cooked. Well, that was a fail. No, I'm not even going to try. I'll just make this into some kind of omelet tomorrow. It's okay. Okay, so now I'm going to take that spoon that I used earlier and put somewhere very clever indeed. I don't know what I did with that lovely spoon. Let me just get rid of these eggshells. Don't know where my egg spoon went. My straining spoon. Oh, there it is. Brilliant. Okay. Strainer spoon. Medieval replica spoon for the win. Okay, let me just check the comments. I will post pictures of the. By the way, Denosa, did you send me an email? I have to go and check. Maybe see if I ever looked an email from you. But I will post a picture of the Neapolitan book collection on my community page and Facebook and Instagram, so you can see what book we're working with. And I will post a link for the online recipe collection for where I got the recipes for the larded milk, because there's this fantastic website I discovered called medievalcookery.com, and they actually do a semi-concordance. They have webbed all of these recipes, and many of them in their original language, and it's available free. There's recipes and menus and all sorts of amazing thing here. So yeah, I'll post the link for that website along with a picture for the Neapolitan recipe collection for easy reference for everyone. That will be tomorrow morning's post my time, this evening's post your time, I guess, for most of you. depends on whether what time zone you're in, which continent you're in. Yeah, I love these bowls, and that I got them, at basically an overstock place in the US. It's amazing what things don't sell, I guess. Okay, so it's interesting. I was just thinking about this. The word for egg yolks in 15th century Neapolitan Italian is reds, the rossi of the eggs, right? And so I wonder what that tells us. I wonder if that's because the yolks were so much more orange from the chickens having a much healthier diet, thereby making the yolks much more vitamin rich, so that they were practically, like really rich yolks that from really, really healthy chickens that eat forage outdoors and eat just grubs and grass and whatnot and don't get fed grain, they actually are almost orange going on red. So I wonder if that's actually an indication of how much healthier the chickens were in Naples in the 15th century, their better diet, a superior diet, as it were. Okay, so it says we have our, no, my bookmark came out. No. Okay, well, thankfully it's recipe 220, so I just know where it is. I don't know where the bookmark went though. This is the bookmark. So I've talked about using finger loop braiding as bookmarks. So this is another of those sample finger loop braids that I use as a bookmark. See, works really well. Right, so we have our 6 egg yolks because I'm doing half, and then it says 3 ounces of sugar. Okay, so ounces. Ounces are not ounces everywhere and across time. An ounce, what an actual ounce is, changes depending on where you are and when you are. And I wasn't able to find what an ounce was exactly in 15th century Naples. But this is sugar, and I've decided not to add sugar because the sweet wine that I found is so sweet that it makes my teeth hurt. So I'm not going to add sugar because I'm pretty certain that this sweet wine is going to be plenty. Whereas I suspect that a sweet wine in the 15th century would not have been sweet as this one is. So I'm not going to add any sugar. I am, however, therefore going to add half an ounce of ginger. And this is maybe half an ounce of ginger. I don't know. Who knows? Because I wasn't able to find exactly what a 15th century Nepalese ounce is, but it's wonderful that this recipe actually includes measurements. It has ounces of sugar, half an ounce of cinnamon, and then it talks about a bucale of the wine. Bucale literally translates to beaker, but beaker in 15th century English is a cup. So it's a cup, but I don't know exactly how big a cup was. I'm going to go with the idea that it's roughly 8 ounces for now because I wasn't able to find anything different. But if you know what a 15th century bucale was in Naples, ideally, but anywhere on the Italian peninsula, how much exactly that was in terms of volumetric measurement, do let me know. I'd be interested. Let me see. Oh, thecreativecontessa.com is my email. I mean, it might as well just pop it out there. Yeah, no, that's cool. If you go to my website, I have a website, thecreativecontessa.com. You can always find me there, but I'm also on Instagram and Facebook, and you can always reach out to me via messenger there. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and add some cinnamon. I like cinnamon. There's hardly ever too much cinnamon for me. Okay, and then we're going to add our wine. Now, some people have asked me, does that mean that this is going to be alcoholic? No, the alcohol mostly cooks off. It will have a slight alcohol content at the end, but it shouldn't be enough for most people to actually cause any kind of reaction. Right? Okay, so now I'm just going to stir this with the kind of stirring option that they would have had. And now that I think about it, I guess I could have put this all through the strainer together. In fact, that might have been the better way to make it all nice and even. Let me just see if I can move there. Sorry for making you queasy. Just moving the camera to be next to the place that I'm actually cooking. Okay, there we go. Nice. Okay. So you can see that actually just the wooden paddle, now that, especially since the eggs have already been strained, they were put through the strainer, which, you know, is another kind of medieval food processing, that actually did a pretty decent job. Now, I am definitely now wishing I had put the cinnamon through the strainer because the cinnamon has done what cinnamon does, and it has clumped up. Right? I should have known better. Okay, well, I'll remember that next time. Put all ingredients through the strainer together to make perfectly wonderful, smooth, even. I can tell you, though, it already smells wonderful. The wine and the cinnamon, it's a really lovely smell. Okay, so now, according to our recipe, I do believe we now put it over the fire to cook. Yep, we have our wine, we have our cinnamon, we've omitted the sugar because the wine, and then cook it until it forms into a thick custard. right? Okay, on goes the heat. Now, it's funny, it doesn't say to stir it constantly, but I know from making custard, many, many, many custards over my life, that you want to stir it constantly. If you do not stir your custard constantly, it will turn into curds, or it will just outright curdle, which is curds, I guess. So you do want to stir it pretty constantly. Interestingly, it doesn't say anything about the heat of your fire. It doesn't say whether your coals should be hot or if it should be far from the fire or close to the fire. Those are all ways of regulating heat on a medieval hearth. But there was something on the bottom that burnt away. Oh well, it's all good. I'm going to go with a medium flame in this case because this is a clay pot. So it's not like a metal pot. The heat will not transmit as immediately and directly. It will first heat up the entire clay pot, and then that will get radiated back at the custard in a pretty even fashion. I love the idea of adding the butter at the end because that is actually the way that lemon curd is made. At the very end, not when you serve it, but at the very last stage after it actually sets, you add the butter in, right? And then it makes it all silky. So here you don't add the butter in as part of the cooking process. You add it when you serve it. But the implication there to me is that it should be warm still, because otherwise your butter is just going to sit on the top and that won't be very appealing. So this really feels like something, and especially the way it says, then put it on the plate and serve it forth, that makes me think that this is definitely meant to be served hot. I'm going to tell you, I often end up eating leftovers cold, and it is still super tasty as a cold custard, but it's definitely superior as a hot custard, as a warm custard. Okay, well, while I stir, I'm just going to look at the comments. Yeah, Dilnoza, I'm serious about wanting to come and visit you. Please reach out to me. I really want to make these plans. I'm excited about coming and visiting you and experiencing Tajik culture. Really, really, really excited. The meows of his people, yeah. Well, Max, thank you. You're super awesome. Appreciate that. Yeah, fresh eggs taste so much better. Absolutely, 100%. Agreed. Agreed. Actually, there are. I'm here in Daegu. Actually, it's a city of, I don't know, 4 million people, and there are actually people who keep chickens here. So when I go out in the morning for my dawn walk, I can hear the roosters crowing in some spots. Yeah, the difference between eggs from the supermarket versus eggs we used to collect from our truly free-range hens is massive. Yep, the color and texture, the thickness of the yolk, completely different. Agreed, 100%. Yep. Yeah, the silkiness of a free-range egg. That's what I'm looking for. A free-range egg yolk is just, it's not, you just can't even imagine, right? It's nothing the same as the kinds of, ooh, look, happened magically. It happens really suddenly, by the way. It goes from being liquid to thickening in almost no time flat, really. And you can see, so this is honestly, I've always made this with a whisk, but I really wanted to try it without a whisk since a whisk is not an option, honestly, in this era, as far as I can tell. And it's actually working out okay. At first I was worried because it was starting to curdle instead of to thicken. But as I'm continuing to stir, I can actually see those lumps breaking up and becoming nice and smooth. I can definitely smell the wine evaporating away, the alcohol in the wine evaporating away. And I don't know if, yeah, you can see that pretty well. Right, I've turned the fire off for now because it was actually starting to go a little quickly. I've removed it from the coals. I've moved it from the flame in the late middle English, early modern English parlance. Okay, I'm just turning it on again because it should be a little bit thicker than this actually. So I just think we need a little more heat to encourage the rest of the thickening. And I can definitely tell that, you know, some of that egg white that ended up in there, it's definitely here. And I'm pretty certain that if I pass this through a strainer, it will go away pretty easily. Now, zabaglione, in this case, as you heard in the recipe, it's just eaten straight in a dish. But, you know, there's no reason, I'm going to add some salt. There's no reason that you couldn't add, you know, use it as an enhancement for something else. You know, maybe pour it on top of an apple tart if you make an apple tart or some other kind of confection-like thing from the 15th century. Tasting it. I was right. The wine is definitely pretty sweet. Now, of course, a lot of people like their food a lot sweeter than I like mine. And as I'm tasting it, I think I would like it a little bit sweeter. I don't have the right kind of sugar. I don't have medieval sugar here, but I do have honey. And they did have honey, and they did cook with honey sometimes. So I'm just going to add some honey to it. Right. And honestly, also the sugars are part of the thickening process, right? The sugars actually going through the stages of syrup, as it were, you know, soft candy, hard candy, that kind of thing, will also be part of the thickening process. So, you know, maybe it's not a great idea that I left out the sugar altogether. But yeah, I was just really concerned about that wine. It was so sweet. It really did set my teeth on edge. Oh my God. Yeah, definitely not a quality item. So I'm turning the flame off again because it is starting to. And these sorts of medieval clay pots, they could be used over flames, and you see that sometimes, but more often you would use it on hot coals, which will provide a more even, more regulatable temperature. It'll also be actually kind of hotter than flames, but it's not going to lick up the side. So it's not going to create burn spots in specific places. And the way that you regulated the temperature was by moving the pot away from the coals or into the coals. That's how you turn the heat up or down, so to say. Obviously, we have much more convenient methods of doing that these days. But yeah. Now, the other thing to remember about custard is that when it's piping hot, it will still seem relatively liquidy because it's piping hot. It's molten. But as it cools, it will also thicken. So just scrape the inside here. Okay, taste. Yeah, adding that honey really helped. Now, the recipe does not call for salt. I don't care. I love salt. I love the way that salt makes things pop. So there we go. I'm going to just say that maybe that's one of those things that's been taken for granted by the original authors. Now, again, they did not have rubber scrapers. You have rubber in medieval Europe. Rubber is actually a tree that grows in the tropics in Indonesia, in Asia, South Asia. And I don't know when they started tapping rubber trees for their latex, but they didn't have rubber in medieval Europe, I guess is my point. And I have not found any evidence of anyone making a leather scraper or something like that. So this is definitely not a medieval technique that I'm doing right now with the rubber scraper to try to get it all down from the sides. But too bad. Okay. Taste test. Pretty good. And not overly sweet. I don't know about you, but I can't personally handle really sweet things anymore. I gave up refined sugar years ago, and ever since then, my sweet meter has definitely been different. Okay, well, let me follow the instructions. Put this in a dish and serve it forth. I'm not going to put it all in a dish. Put some of it in the dish. Yeah, the color isn't amazing. But, you know, again, I think the color would be different if these were the yolks, fresh yolks from fresh eggs from chickens, hens specifically, obviously, that actually ate the kinds of things chickens are really supposed to eat and live the lifestyle that chickens are really supposed to live versus the way we make them live now. Ugh, that was not beautiful. Scrape this down, make it pretty. Okay, and now for the addition of butter, and also I need a spoon. Spoon again. I keep magically putting that spoon down. Oh, here it is. Great. Okay. Now, butter on top. And it's interesting. It says fresh butter. So I think that is a distinction between cultured butter and uncultured butter, I think. Okay. There it is. Let's give it a taste. Goodness, I've missed lots of comment. I can't even eat any fruits. It's a thing. And I didn't strain. I'm not even noticing any little egg white. I just realized I didn't strain it. That's okay. It's actually fine. So apparently, it is possible to make a custard without an egg-based custard without a whisk. Who would have thunk? Who would have thunk? So good. I mean, just look at the way that butter is melting. Okay. Well, everyone, are there any questions? First off, I would like to thank everyone for joining me for my first Creative Contessa medieval cooking party. I've had a fantastic time. I hope you all have liked it too. This was my first go, so you know, I'm obviously still trying to figure out how to work in my space a little bit. What more I need to set up next time and whatnot. I'll do a short showing you the final product of our larded milk and how I present it, and maybe I'll do a video cooking it or something like that. We'll see. Maybe I'll just do another live stream. Maybe I'll just do an impromptu live stream of me frying up our larded milk. Yeah. Did you or anyone else have awesome memories of parents or grandparents cooking? Me? Yeah, so for those who don't know, I come from a family where food is a religion and preparing food and cooking food for others is a way of life. My great-grandmother hand wrote collections of recipes in this beautiful Palmer penmanship, including old family recipes. She's from the old country, right? So she was a Hungarian immigrant. And she has recipes in her collection from Germany and from Hungary from over 120 years ago that don't exist in Hungary or Germany anymore. They don't make those dishes that way anymore. So I grew up cooking. My father learned to cook from his grandmother, and I learned to cook from my father. I've been cooking since I could actually stand on a chair without falling over or helping cook. Anyway, yeah, so I come from a long cooking background. Cooking is absolutely practically a religion in my family, 100%. Yeah, lots of good memories cooking. And my papa is still pretty well known for his cookery. He travels around the country actually helping out in medieval kitchens cooking for a variety of events and whatnot. Oh, let's see. Oh, goodness. Okay. More cooking. Love the cooking party. Definitely do the form of curry. We did, actually, the recipe we did today, this larded milk was from a form of curry, just so you know. Today's recipe, the larded milk from a form of curry. So we definitely did that. Okay, yeah, I really enjoyed this, everyone. Thank you for joining me. It was a little rough start with the sound, but I think we fixed it. Question. Can you still hear me if I go around the corner? I'm going to go around the corner. Okay, I'm talking, and I'm walking towards my amazing book collection. Okay, so can you all still hear me back here, or did my sound go away? Okay, I'm coming back now. Okay, just a test since I have you all and you seem game. Could you still hear me? Could you still hear me there? Oh my gosh, the Zabaglione with the addition of butter, that's the winning combination. Oh my God. I wish I could invite, well, I can invite you here. I wish you could come here and taste it. Great. Okay. Well, that means that I was actually on the microphone. Thank you for confirming that, everyone. Really appreciate it. Yeah, we cooked for the, for our local church. We cooked for scouts. Yeah, lots of cooking in my family. Lots of happy cooking memories. So it's kind of a natural addition to this channel. I was worried that the algorithm was going to punish me because it's not sewing, and the algorithm kind of wants to pigeonhole me, but I think it's accepted that medieval living history is more than just one thing. Yay, finally. Well, I would like to thank my patrons and my channel members. Some of you were here today. Takeda and Han, you were present. If I missed any of my other patrons or channel members, I'm not sure if Laurie was here or not. Susan, my super fans like Susan and Thomas, who always watch and comment. Really appreciate you all so much. All of you who've become part of what I'm calling my court. I really enjoyed building this community together where we explore history. I share what I've learned, you share what you know, and we help each other grow and gain a better understanding about the material culture of the past. If you would like to support me on a more financial level, consider patronage or channel membership. Comes with a whole host of extra perks, including live Zoom sessions together. The next live Zoom session is actually coming up this week. We have two different ones scheduled, one aimed at America's time zone and one aimed at Europe time zone. Both of them obviously work for Asia time zone because that's where I am right now. And of course, access to a whole host of extra videos, full-hour tutorials, extra content, and I have a Discord for my patrons and channel members as well. But for those who can't afford it, I totally understand, and I just appreciate you being part of my journey however you can. Yeah. Yep. And tomorrow morning, we'll have my next medieval sewing party. Sorry, tomorrow morning, my time. So whatever time that is for you all. In tomorrow morning Seoul time, that will be evening in the Americas, afternoon, evening in the Americas, middle of the night Europe. So for my night owls. And then Sunday evening Americas, middle of the night Europe. I'm so sorry. Monday morning Asia will be medieval story time. So stay tuned for lots and lots of fun. I really appreciate you all. And if you feel up to it, when the recording drops, if you can just put a comment under it, because, not in the live stream, but actually under the video, the algorithm, blah, blah, blah. It's the ecosystem in which I have to operate. I would also like to thank Armor and Castings for being my channel sponsor. You all have seen the amazing bling I have from them. They've got a wide array of affordable options as well. If you would like to go check out the amazing replica medieval jewelry on armorandcastings.com, armor with a U, ARMOUR, and castings, enter the code Contessa10 for an extra 10% off. Otherwise, I really appreciate all the great feedback, everyone. It's been fantastic. And I was a little apprehensive about how this format might go and how it would be received, but I think we've done pretty great. I think we've had a good time tonight, everyone. If you have requests for a specific, now Hildegard von Bingen, I will definitely go and see what I can find there in terms of recipes we can play with. She's got a lot of recipes, so it's not that there aren't, just what works for the format, rather. Yeah, I'll go check that out. If you have other requests for recipes, drop it in the comments under the video, and then I will be able to track it easily. Requests for recipes or polities and whatnot. I've got some really interesting historical cookbooks in my collection, including a book of cookery from Baghdad in the 10th century or 11th century, I think. Okay, everyone. Any last comments before we part ways? And because I don't want you to watch when I stick my face in the bowl and start licking. Don't judge. Don't judge me. So good. It really is. And as it's cooling, as I promised you, as I said what happened, it is thickening as it cools. So it might seem, remember that if you make the zabaglione, and you notice it's super easy, talk about a toss together recipe. If you make it, don't be alarmed that it's not thick at first. As it cools, it does thicken. So good. So very good. Okay. Okay, Dilnoza, drop me an email. thecreativecontessa@gmail.com. I really want to come visit you. I'm serious. I want to make plans and actually do this. Buy the tickets, get it all set up. I think it's going to be amazing. Cool Cat, appreciate you. Oh, and of course, one more gratuitous kitty shot. Let me see if I can find one of the feline overlords. How have they all wandered away? Tommy, did you shut yourself in the bedroom again? Kitties, where are you? You're adoring. There's a Nobby. Ah, there we go. Gratuitous kitty. There's the little Nobby. My latest rescue baby from last year. This is Nobby, everyone. Say hello, Nobby. Nobby means butterfly in Korean. It's a common cat name. Yeah. And her mother stopped nurturing her and her sister when she was about 5 weeks old. Her sister didn't make it. We didn't get to her in time. We got her to the vet, but the poor thing just died. But we did get to the vet in time for Nobby. So this is Nobby. And her 2 older rescue brothers, eventually she forced herself on them, and they have adopted her in full. So, oh, little baby, it's okay. I'm sorry. Oh, okay. Thank you all. Have a lovely evening. Until tomorrow, hopefully. May your adventures be creative, everyone. Bye.